Let me turn off the game that's not meant to be visible yet. Let me try again. I'm about as ready and professional and polished as usual by the looks of things. Once more, with feeling. Hi, and welcome to another annual recap of the games that I made in the last 12 months. Today I'm going to be covering Bat Egg, Hive Time, Cloud Courier, X52 games, Flat, and Bonesweeper. I'm not going to be talking about any of the contract work that I did, which means no Tachyon, no Closed Hands, no Summer Days, and I don't think we'll be talking about the away team today either. But as far as original games go, this is it for 2021, and I am looking forward to being joined by Peter Silk, composer on Bat Egg and Hive Time, Aubrey Serr, the portrait artist on Hive Time, and Albuffalo, who was an artist on Cloud Courier. It's gonna be a pretty casual, laid-back chat where we're gonna talk about whatever feels appropriate. So to begin with, I will invite Peter to join us here as we talk about the away team. Peter, are you there? Let me give you a nudge. Alright. Get some Bat Egg visible here. There it is. Alright, while we wait for Peter, Bat Egg is a... I normally get my collaborators to explain what my games are, because that's more fun for me. But Bat Egg is a game in which you play as a Bat Egg, searching for its family, and on the surface, it looks like... Oh, my bad. Alright, there we go, that's kind of silly. I'd muted myself and deafened myself in the voice chat that we're using. Hey Peter, how you doing?
Hello.
I'm on the ball, you can tell.
No, that's alright. I just thought I might have missed something obvious.
No, I appreciate the heads up because I definitely had not noticed.
Okay. Good. Hello. Yes, I'm doing alright.
I'm glad to hear. It's been a while since we last talked. So it is nice to hear that you are well. I would love if you were willing to tell everybody who's listening what Bat Egg is in your own words.
What Bat Egg is in my own words? It's a Wow. Okay.
I just did this a second ago.
Yeah. And I didn't hear it, so I can't use those words.
Oh, it was very similar to your words.
You'd never believe that I at one point took improvisation classes because I'm a complete loss for words being put on the spot. So yes, it's it is a kind of an arcade game where you are in charge of a winged egg of some description that is attempting to go on this journey and has to navigate around obstacles with controls that feel a little bit adjacent to what's that other game called? I'm not going to remember the name of it.
I'm going to imagine you're leading towards Flappy Bird. Is that?
I am. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of, but a little bit kind of gentler, I would say, than that game. A little bit less frantic and more. It's still kind of tricky to control and figure out. There's a bit of kind of puzzling in the figuring out, routing through the levels, but it's that sort of thing.
I feel like it's been a like a hurdle or a handicap for the game is that kind of like the idea for me was I want to make something that is my idea of what a Flappy Bird type game could be, as far as like the most kind of interesting and fun and enjoyable thing to do, but I feel like I haven't done enough to communicate that it's something more than or different than Flappy Bird. It's not about flapping around uncontrollably. It's about using the glide mechanic to maintain control, and I see a lot of people forgetting that they can glide in the hectic.
Yeah.
It's good.
I'm probably guilty of that myself, actually. But no, I understand exactly what you mean, and I almost didn't want to use the words Flappy Bird, and
Yeah.
I could barely remember them when I was trying to describe it in my own words, because I actually don't think that this game gives me the same thing that game gives me. Like, if I was playing Flappy Bird, I am anticipating a kind of frantic twitch reflex challenge, and there is a little bit of that in this. You definitely need some reflexes, and there's definitely some of the same kind of in a good way frustration that game has to it as well, but I don't think it's the same feeling game, really. It's a lot more.
I'm glad to hear that, because it's hard for me as the designer to see it through other people's eyes, and that's been my big worry, is that people just go, oh, it's another Flappy Bird.
Right.
But if it does carry that different feel, then that makes me kind of happy.
Yeah, no, I really do think it does, but it's kind of the obvious starting point comparison, I suppose.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, 'cause I don't want to linger too long on Flappy Bird, but the things that stand out in my mind that differentiate it are that in Flappy Bird, I think the level scrolls automatically. I've never played it, so that's another reason that it's hard for me to. but yeah, I think it scrolls automatically, and it's more about timing. You've only got the one control, which is your flap, whereas in this, you can, if you mess something up, you can kind of go back and then change your mind and reapproach it from a different angle. And I felt like that made things a little bit more technical, I guess, and a little bit more interactive.
All those things feel true. Yeah, it's been a long time since I played Flappy Bird myself, but that feels about right. Yeah, what you said.
So, are there any because you did the music, and I've got you on, so we should probably talk about the music. Are there any inspirations that you were drawing upon for this?
I mean, I was definitely thinking of.
Because I don't remember what I told you in terms of what I was drawing upon.
I mean, you definitely said that you wanted something that at least started out sounding very simple. I think you wanted kind of some form of simplicity, like it was. I can't remember the exact words that you used, but you wanted to be almost kind of naivety to it.
Yes.
So that was definitely in kind of at the top of my head when I was thinking of what to do. As for inspirations, I mean, I was really just kind of drawing on a lot of the kind of old. I mean, you mentioned stuff like Super Frog, which was a game that I played way back in the Amiga days, and
was it on other platforms?
I don't know what else it was on. It might have been. It plausibly could have been on like Mega Drive. A lot of stuff came out on that, or Genesis, or whatever. What was it called for you?
It was Super Frog, and it was advertising.
No, sorry, the Mega Drive.
Oh, it was a Mega
Genesis.
Drive.
What was it?
Yeah,
it was a Mega Drive. Okay.
Yeah, I think we ended up with most of the same nomenclature as the UK, and obviously we ended up with the Amiga as well. It was a little bit more popular here than it was in other places.
Yeah, no. So I played that game and various others, and I kind of. I was vaguely drawing on those sorts of things, but I don't think I was exactly directly inspired by any of that stuff. Just the first thought that I'm almost reluctant to say this because recorder fans will not like me for it, but my first thought when you said, oh, you want something that's kind of simple and kind of naive was, oh, what if I did it on what if I did a lot of the soundtrack on a recorder? And so that was really my kind of starting point.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm reluctant to say that is because the recorders are
it's an instrument. It's a tool, right?
It gets a bad rap. It's often kind of thought of as a child's instrument, but there are very good professional recorder players. There are lots of like soundtracks and things that make really good use of really beautiful recorder that is played by professionals who are very good at what they do, and maybe people don't even realize they're hearing the recorder when they're hearing it some of the time.
Yeah, it's not just a clarinet for kids.
No, it's a perfectly cromulent instrument. Yeah, but it does have this association with schools and being the kind of my first wind instrument sort of thing. So I thought, oh, well, that's kind of an association that people have, and I could like subtly detune the flute in these tracks so it sounds a bit like a beginner recorder player playing it, and not make the melodies too complicated, and sort of go from there, and that will maybe get some of the naivety that you were going for.
I think because I'd done some initial musical sketches before you came on board, and I think for the main menu I'd done something that I was hoping had the same kind of feel that Heart and Soul has when people who don't know how to play piano play it, because it's like it has this kind of sense of, I don't know, maybe I'm projecting here, but it's one of those things where like chopsticks as well, is you learn the movements and you make the sounds, and it kind of sounds okay. It sounds like something people can recognize, and that's empowering.
Right.
And I really like that. Heart and Soul is the one that goes da 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 da. The way that people play it, it's actually like a jazz standard. It sounds nothing like that.
It is. Yes.
But yeah, I like that.
But you put lots of chords underneath it. Yeah, it's not quite.
It's the same melody
version.
But a little bit different character to it. But yeah, I do really like that quality that it has when people play it, and it's the only thing they know how to play, and they feel good about being able to play it like that. I feel like that carries through.
Fragmental Stew in the chat asks, is this recorder music now? And I can't hear the music because I'm not listening to the stream, but given that nearly all of it is, then I'm going to say probably yes.
Yeah, anything that sounds like a whistle, all of the melodies, I think, are flute recorder. Definitely this one. This is Zone 3, which has that kind of more whimsical feel to it.
I was a little bit too over-ambitious with it at the beginning because I'm going to get to your intro thing as well, but I was just I was a little bit over-ambitious because I thought, what if I learned to play the recorder badly? And I sort of did learn to play the recorder badly, but it proved quite difficult to play it badly in exactly the way that I wanted it to be. So I ended up using samples and just simulating a recorder being played not that particularly well.
Right. And that makes sense. I wish I had that option when I was painting the Baby Bee paintings for the backs of the nurseries in Hive Time. I had to paint badly. There was no way around it.
Right. I suppose when you asked about like inspirations and stuff for it, I probably should have mentioned. Well, yes, you did show me the stuff that you've made for it already.
Oh, and, okay. I just want to say very quickly, I wasn't fishing for fishing for recognition.
No, I know you weren't, because you wouldn't. But it's true though. It very much put me in the mind of, okay, yes, I understand exactly the sort of thing that you're talking about now when you're talking about the kind of almost naive melodies and that sort of thing. And look, we ended up using the melody that you'd come up with for the title.
That made me very happy.
And
It wasn't something I asked for. It was something.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think it was something that I asked for. I don't know. I think I had said that I was very specific about trying to maintain that feel, but I don't think I'd said you have to use my melody.
No, I think what you said is that if there's a way of using it and it works, then that would be cool. But I'll say now, if I had thought I just don't have a way of using this melody, or I can't do it, or I don't like it enough to use it, or whatever, I think I would have just told you that. I did it, or I'd have found a way to say I'd like to try and come up with something on my own.
Yeah.
But
well, I did do like test tracks for the level summary and the game over music, and I think you ended up. I think you again drew from what I had done in terms of the character and style, but I don't think those used the melodies that I had.
Yeah, one of them uses it. I can't remember which one it is now.
I think it's a game over one because I think the level summary ended up being a lot brighter and different, which is fine. I love it. I think it's all great.
I think that one does still use a little bit of it though, but I had to change it quite a lot to make it work in that case. But yeah, the game over one uses it, but the title music it makes. Well, it's the same melody, and I've just kind of added a section onto the end of it, I think, is what I did, and just kind of bulked up the instrumentation just to add some excitement there and bring it more in line with the rest of the soundtrack, and I think it worked very well. It's one of my favourite things, actually, for it to be honest.
I really love how all of it came out, to be honest. In terms of inspirations as well, and like this is more for the game in general than the soundtrack specifically, but Yoshi's Island, which is Super Mario World 2, I think. I don't think it ever had that subtitle here. I think it was just Yoshi's Island, so that's all I know it by. But I think like its visual style I love to pieces, but I didn't try to emulate that. But the level summary screen in particular, in my mind, was trying to evoke some of the same energy that has when you finish a level, and then it's like it's all this upbeat stuff that it's giving you as it's telling you about how you did.
Yeah.
And also like being able to like carry stuff around in Yoshi's Island is fun as well, and that kind of led a little bit into the hatchling thing. Now that we're at Zone 4, which has my favourite music of the game, this is like, I think, was this the last one that you did?
It was one of the later ones, definitely. I know which one you mean now. Yes.
Yeah.
I have it in my head. Yeah, it is one of the last ones I did.
Yeah, I love this because not to say that any of the other stuff is uninteresting, but this has like there's a whole bunch of different qualities to this that I really, really like. It's got like that kind of call and response thing going on with the 2-part melody that I really enjoy. Yeah. And then when you get, because what I wanted to lead into was talking about how across the zone, across each of the zone's levels, we're actually building up the track into a more complex piece. So it starts off with the most simplified version, and then we bring in more. I don't think we ended up just like having layers, right? We had separate tracks, so you were free to make them as different as you wanted.
So I've always kind of been interested in that layering thing of just making different versions that you could layer on top of each other, and we probably could have achieved something like that. And I think in the early version of what we were doing, we
had done tests,
switch between layers, but we in the end I think I suggested that it might be just simpler if we progressed and then had the hand claps as a separate layer.
Yeah. And that worked well. I'm really happy with how that came out.
Yeah. I think that came out well. But yeah, I'd always been interested in doing something with layers like that since stuff like Monkey Island 2, going through the swamp and all of that kind of business with the layers and getting added in the music. So that was fun to do. Why was I talking about that?
Yeah, I was gonna say that that being able to ramp the music up across the zone does give us the ability to convey not only a sense of progression, but like lead into the final level of the zone feeling like a crescendo from a gameplay perspective, as well as from like an oral perspective. And the way the clapping works is really great because it's because it's not one clap, right? It's multiple claps. And so when you've got a little hatchling following you, it makes it feel a little bit less lonely, you know? And that, again, thematically resonates with the rest of the game. I just love how it all came out. And this track in particular was unexpected to me. I love how it came out.
This one, I really felt, just looking at the art for this and just how things moved, I wanted to just make something a little bit... Well, first of all, you're getting towards the end of the game, but we wanted a different mood for the end of the game, so I wanted something just a little bit more exciting, but also just a little bit busier. There's something about just the leaves blowing in the wind in the background, and just something about this scene that made me think, I want a bit more action in here.
Yeah.
And so that's why I went with that for this one, and I think it layers up well. I think you mentioned in the past you like where it gets to by the last.
Yeah, I absolutely love it.
Level.
And this is like, from a narrative point, is kind of meant to be like a sort of tonal transition into where the end goes, because you start at the beginning, you're all hopeful and stuff, and then this is, to excuse the expression, this is when shit starts to get real, as far as it's a little bit less fun now, but we're like focused on determination is the thing that the narrative kind of hopefully presents and pushes, and so I feel like the music really helps establish and reinforce that.
Yeah, I thought like just going for a kind of still quite optimistic determination, because I knew that in the next level we were gonna tone it down a little in a way.
Yeah.
Would be a good move for this as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so. Yeah, I don't have the words to describe how happy I am with how it came out.
That's good. I'm really glad about that.
What else was I going to say? You mentioned Monkey Island earlier. Did that play any kind of inspirational role? Because I think the first track that you did reminded me a lot of the Monkey Island 1 forest theme.
Well, yeah, because I eventually came back and did another version of that, didn't I? For the cave level, is that right? I think that's right.
It was either the cave level or the rain one, the one that we're listening to now. I think. It was this one, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, what I would say is I probably wasn't directly inspired by Monkey Island for it, but almost everything's Monkey Island when you boil it down.
Is a little bit inspired by Monkey Island, because I was kind of obsessed with those games and those soundtracks for those games when I was growing up. So they're just in there, and so it'll bleed out whenever it's even a little bit appropriate. So so that, yes, they're in the way that I construct the bass line and stuff like that, and just rhythmically as well. There's elements of that, I can hear it for sure, but I wasn't thinking at this point. I wasn't consciously going to that well. It was just naturally emerging, because that's that's where my comfort zone is. That's where that's my little kind of
It's your safe space.
that's my safe space. Yeah, musically, it's something that I've been immersed in for a long time. So
Yeah, no, I can
when
understand
I'm
that.
I mean, I guess almost when I'm thinking, oh, well, what do I want to make that sounds kind of naive in the way that you wanted to? Well, I'll think about when I was musically quite naive and I was just trying to make tunes that sounded a bit like Monkey Island tunes, and what sort of things did I make then, and that sort of thing. So there's probably a little bit of that kind of subconsciously came into it.
That's cool. And also, I also am a big fan of Monkey Island and of Michael Land's music from that.
Yes.
I'm thinking about, like, 'cause there's some context for this game that I haven't talked about, which is that, and I guess it makes sense to bring it up. This was the game that I was going to make with my then partner Miriam for the jam that resulted in Hive Time. And as far as I was aware, it was a game that we were eventually going to make together. And I don't want to linger on that. But we had this Tool Off Bees thing, which was our art blog, and everything else that was cute that we wanted to. Pretty much anything we collaborated on was Tool Off Bees stuff. And we had like some vocabulary, which was mostly silly noises or phrases that we made to each other. And one of them was Omamo, and that comes from me doing the Monkey Island 1 forest music, because it's like the bass line goes and that's kind of where it grew out of. And so like, not something that you were conscious of at all, because I don't even know if I've mentioned that before, but it was,
I don't think so.
It was kind of nice to have that resonance there for me, to have that little sort of tie back to that same piece of music that helped form some of the character and tone of the stuff that we did.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something that I had in the back of my mind, even if it wasn't in the front of my mind, to bring in a little bit.
So after you'd done that first test, because like when you first started doing the music for it, I think it was still just a green background with squares. Maybe I'd put some bushes in, but there was maybe some rocks. I don't know, but there was not like the diversity of zones that we see here. But after I'd heard the music, I was like, oh well, this is a little bit darker, a little bit more spooky than I had imagined. But maybe it makes sense to have a level that's like a cemetery level, maybe.
Yeah.
And so these obstacles down here are kind of visually meant to evoke tombstone-y type shapes, even though it's more abstract and not explicit. So the music definitely informed some of how the game came out in that respect, which is cool.
Yeah, so when I first saw the character, I thought, well, this character seems like a little bit Halloween-y, but sort of in a cute way, in a very cute way. And so I thought, well, maybe an angle for this soundtrack is just to go for kind of cute but slightly spooky tunes, and that's what kind of informed the first demo of this that I sent you. And in the end, he said, well, it's maybe not what you want for overall tone, but you could imagine that being
definitely got a space for
a level in it. And then that made me realize, okay, so we'll back off from that for the whole thing, but there's still things that I can take from this to make the rest of the soundtrack. And then I made the after that, the music, I think, that ended up being the first level music, which is probably just the purest version of that, just very kind of hummable tune that is a bit naive and kind of simple. I could play it reasonably successfully on the recorder, which means it can't be that difficult. I definitely could not have played some of the things that I ended up writing on the recorder.
Well, it's good to have the flexibility, right?
Yeah.
I nearly hit an obstacle there. I'm expecting that maybe I'll do a perfect playthrough. It's not meant to be an easy game, and that's another thing that I think maybe helps steer it away from its intended identity, is that if you're not trying to play perfectly, you can kind of get to the end without a lot of trouble. Once you've understood how movement works, if you're still trying to flap everywhere and not gliding, then no, you're never gonna get anywhere. But the idea was that the collecting all the friends wasn't something that you would do on your first run. And
indeed, I did not very often manage to successfully do that. Yeah, I don't, much like Hive Time, which I was never particularly good at figuring out good strategies for as well. With this, I am, well, put it this way, I didn't hear the hand claps very often when I was playing through myself.
No. I added in some, I don't know if you ever used them, but I added in some cheats that would spawn a hatchling at whatever nest you're at. As a way of making that stuff easier to get to.
Yeah, I think you showed me that at one point, and then I was like, oh, okay, I can reliably test this now. This is good.
Yeah. Initially, I had it so that the hatchlings would die if you. So my initial thought for this, and I guess we're like, if I'm playing through the whole thing, it doesn't matter if I spoil it. So the idea is at the beginning, you're lonely and you're trying to find your family. You believe that there must be other bad eggs somewhere, and you go out in search of them. And from the beginning, it's a doomed quest. The intention is that you will never, or like my intention as a developer is that you will never find the family that you're looking for. The family that you end up with is the hatchlings that you find along the way. The end of this zone is you dying. You know, this is meant to be that we've been on this quest so long and we've invested so much of ourselves in it that we get to this point where we're in the snow and we're just at the end of whatever energy or motivation we had. And in the final level of this zone in story mode, there's no final nest, and the level just kind of continues on further than you can fly, or if you do have enough spare lives to carry you around, the first nest actually ends up disappearing, so you can't go back to it. And your only course of action is to fall to the ground, and the moment that you do, it plays the game over music and gives you what looks like, you know, game over stuff. But the outro cutscene is that if you have befriended some of those hatchlings along the way, they come and rescue you. And so it's about found family, not about finding the family you're looking for, right?
Yeah, that's nice, because I did always have this concern that that it's a bit
dark.
It's kind of brutal that when you got the hatchling, when you hit an obstacle, it's the hatchling that gets sacrificed in order for you to continue it.
Yeah,
like,
so.
But it's good that's kind of addressed in the ending. I think that's nice.
So it's that actually brings up the thing that I was intending to mention before I got off in the weeds. There was that originally the hatchlings like proper died when you bumped into an obstacle of some kind. And oh, here we go. We're at the end. There's nothing here. And if we try and go back, the nest is gone. But yeah, originally the hatchlings would die entirely, and I found that it was too sad for me, because like this is a sad project for me anyway. But I also got feedback from players that they didn't like it, and they stopped playing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I kind of like that it's sad because it's meant to be sad. Like that's a consequence for you messing up, and that sort of sucks. But yeah, I wasn't really willing to put people through that, so I made it so that they just return to the last nest that you visited.
There's a version of this as well, which you could have where instead of that, what happens when you hit an obstacle is that the main bat egg dies, and then the hatchling gets bigger and sprouts big wings and takes over from where the other one
Oh dear, that's pretty funny.
leaves off. Yeah.
It doesn't fit with the overall narrative,
No.
but it's a funny,
It doesn't. But,
amusing thought. But yeah,
yeah, it would in a different direction, definitely.
Yeah. For a moment, I thought you were going to say, like, you die, and then the bad eggs just hover in place, looking really, really sad. I was like, oh, that's...
Right.
Alright,
Yeah.
so we die. And it plays the game over music for us. And so the first page, I wanted to have kind of a storybook feel. And so there's a lot of like structural repetition between the different zone intros, and this first page of the outro is the same for the good ending and the bad ending. But I wanted to make it so that like you hear the flapping coming, and then the pickup sound, as like actually sorry, the first two pages are the same, except if it's the bad ending, you don't hear the pickup sound, the flapping just kind of fades away, and it's meant to be that you imagined it. But now it's all, haha, you didn't mean, without realizing that you did it, you found a family, and then when you were lost, the family found you. And that's
Yeah.
that's the note that I wanted to end on. The context that I gave for this project might suggest that this is me expressing the end of the relationship that spawned the project, but this is what we had in mind from the beginning, or at least this is what I had in mind from the beginning. So it's not meant to be commentary on stuff. I want the final level to feel like easy and trivial. So it's like straight down, it's linear. It doesn't have any of the side to side stuff that the vertical levels usually have going on. Going down is a lot more controllable than going up, and you can kind of take it at your own pace, and it feels really relaxed and fun. But I also want it to feel like you're coming home, and so you're progressing backwards through all of the zones of the game, which doesn't look as good as I had kind of hoped. There were things that I wanted to do that were just, from a technical perspective, required more work than I had time to be able to do it. But this thing of having a chain of hatchlings following you was something that I really wanted to do from the beginning. Really enjoy. That's coming back to Yoshi's Island as well. Like, you've got a big long train of eggs following you, which is fun. But the other thing that I like from a musical perspective, something that I wanted to do was that the game over music would play through this sequence, hopefully recontextualizing it from like a sad thing to a hopeful thing. And again, it's difficult for me to assess how successful the things that I wanted to do were, but I kind of feel like I did that. Like, I feel like it sort of did the things that I wanted to do there, and part of that is definitely your contribution. I don't know how you feel about that. I don't even know if you've played the final level much or at all.
I did not actually. You showed me what you had in mind for the final level, but I didn't play it through it myself. But I think it works in the way that it's intended. This is your theme again, so this is based heavily on your game over music, with a few embellishments by me, and I think it strikes the right tone, because it's not entirely. It's a little bit sad. It's sad enough to be game over music, but it's not. But it's also hopeful enough to serve this purpose as well. So I think it kind of strikes the right balance there, honestly.
Yeah, I'm super happy with how it came out, and like, to reinforce that coming home thing, I put a beach ball in the very first nest of the first level, and the beach ball is in the tutorial as well. It's the thing that you have to pick up instead of a hatchling, because I didn't want to. Excuse me, I didn't want to spoil or lead with the hatchling at the beginning.
Right.
So yeah, it was. That's right. We don't play any music for the final game over music, so that we can have the this music come in for the credits. This is the only place that we've got this music, I think. We didn't use this anywhere else.
Yeah, I think that's right. We didn't use it anywhere else. It's actually one of my favorites as well, though.
Yeah,
this is also
I
one
really
of the
like this.
last ones I did.
So
yeah.
I really had wanted to do something that was use generated levels, because I wanted to have a game that could provide me with unexpected experiences, and provide me with, as someone who knew the game, with surprises and challenges. And I'm really happy with how the level generation came out. I feel like it does what it needs to do, and I'm happy with that. But during development, I also had some small urges to do authored levels as well. And in the back of my head, I have the outline for a second story that I could do with this game, which would use authored levels. And I feel like this track could also work really well for like an overworld map. So if that ever happens, I think it will this track will probably get a bit more airtime.
Yeah, no, that would be nice, because it is kind of. I like having it as the credits music. I think it works well in its place, but it's almost like I wish people would hear it earlier.
Hear it more,
it
yeah.
is one of the ones that I like, or more, yeah, because it's one of the ones that I do like most. I was really pleased with how this one came out.
I like it because it feels. I don't know if mature is the right word, but it feels more developed than the intro music. It still carries some of its qualities, I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of consciously a little less naive in some ways. I think I also just really turned down the detuning of the instruments as well, and just added a couple more layers which aren't really prominent in
the intro,
the other ones, so that it just feels a bit. It feels sort of kind of. This sounds really possibly too pretentious, but it feels a bit like emotionally complete in relation to the rest of the game.
1000%. That echoes something that I was not able to like enunciate there. Definitely, emotionally complete is what I was trying to say.
Good. I'm glad.
If you finish the game and get to the credits that way, then you get to see this sticky note drawing of a bad egg, which is one of the first bad egg drawings that we did for each other, and it's terrible. It's probably the worst bad egg we ever drew. Actually, I need to own this. I'm pretty sure that's my bad egg. It's probably the worst bad egg I had ever drawn. But it felt right. It felt like the right thing to stick there.
Yeah. It's all there, though. Like, not much has changed in the fundamental design.
Yeah, it's not the most complex or intricate of character designs. So whenever you pick up a hatchling and take it to the end of the level, you then unlock it as a playable skin, and so I made, I think, 19 all up, plus this template one that you can use to make your own, if that's exciting. But yeah, I'm really happy with how the little dudes came out. I'm really happy with how the structure of it all came out. I feel like even more so than Hive Time, with like the minor exception of the background doodads not being visible in the final level. I feel like this is exactly the game that I intended to make, and I'm really happy with how it came out. I might play the tutorial briefly before we wrap up, so we've got a bit of room to do or say any closing thoughts. But I'm thinking if I do any patches to this, I would like to do little update to the tutorial that has like a little ghost version of your bad egg doing the action that the tutorial is asking you to do, just so that you can see that happening. Because I think it's like, particularly with the short flap, I noticed that some people are still struggling to get that. I also want the tutorial to have to set the tone a little bit, and so like when it opens, it's like, this is you, you're a bad egg, what a nice little bad egg you are. Is definitely pushing that sort of cute thing in there. Yeah, I don't know if you have any other thoughts that you want to bring up before we wrap up. I think we spent a little bit longer than I had intended on Bad Egg, but Bad Egg was easily the biggest project that I worked on this year, so I think that's okay.
No, all I'll add is that, you know, as it has been each time that we've had a chance to work on something together, it's been really good, real pleasure. Do it again anytime, you know. It's always great to work with you. This was a really fun one to do at a time where I was feeling a bit creatively at sea, I think, as well, and
I know you had said to me a couple times that you appreciated having like some of the direction that I gave with the temp tracks that I'd done.
Yeah, no, it was actually, it was quite a even though it had these kind of characters of naivety and simplicity, it was quite a hard soundtrack to do in many ways, just because I was feeling I really had to kind of I really needed to get myself into the right headspace to make it, and I was at a time when I wasn't feeling particularly creative, and it really helped to have your kind of musical touch points to kind of get me into the right frame of mind when I was a bit lost with it as well. But no, I was really glad I did it, because I felt much better for having done that. It kind of reassured me that even if I'm not feeling confident in my abilities, I actually can still work.
Yeah,
I actually can still produce good stuff. I just need to maybe just give myself a little bit more time or patience.
Yeah, it's like, it's hard to be kind to yourself sometimes in these kinds of situations where you've got a lot of pressure or sense of obligation, or like, not necessarily that I was putting on pressure, or I want to hope that I was providing a comfortable and flexible work environment. but when you're a creative person making stuff, you feel that a lot of your creative identity is tied to your productivity, and that intrinsically creates a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it was all bound up in like going back to work after being furloughed and that sort of thing, and finding that I was no longer making music full time, and I had to fit it around my other job that takes up most of my week, and just not having to just figure out how to do that again, how to have these kind of two competing aspects of my life again, and that's kind of what led me into I've sort of a little bit forgotten how to do this, and this was the kind of the project that helped get me back into the swing of doing that a bit.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that it was a positive experience. It's definitely, again, I was planning to do the music on my own, and I was not expecting to have you jump on and say, hey, I want to work on this, but I feel like you did way better music than I could have done on my own, and the game is stronger and richer and more complete because of it, and I'm very thankful that we had another opportunity. It's good.
Oh, thank you.
And I guess before I close, because it's something that I really like how the menu came out in this, where the menu is a 3D scene that the camera moves around depending upon what screen you're looking at. And it's like, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit self-indulgent to be super focused on it, but I just really like the way that it feels like one seamless space that you move through. And I also really like the version notice thing in the top corner that gives you a summary of the changelog and tells you about what's going on. It's a little bit less in your face than Hive Times is, because Hive Times just like constantly shows that text all the time. Whereas this one, you mouse over it and it tells you about stuff. That's cool. I like it. But anyway, that's Fat Egg. Again, thank you for working with me on a cool game. And thank you also to everybody who played this before release and gave me feedback and testing. I'm very thankful to the time and effort that you spent on that as well. All those people in the credits that we saw earlier. I think there's more than I want to list out individually, but I do want to make note of Chitu or Dragoi or Jimmy, who definitely was the number one person who played the game the most and gave me the most amount of useful bug reports and stuff. But yeah. Alright, well that's...
Thank you, and thanks for having me on this thing as well. I do enjoy this look back.
Yeah, thanks for joining. I feel like it's really healthy to like just stop and have some reflection, and I'm very glad to provide that to my collaborators as well. So yeah, that's been fun. That's been Bad Egg. Thank you again. And if you want to hang around to talk about Hive Time, you're welcome. But I know that it's kind of getting late over there, so you're totally fine if you need to disappear.
Yeah, I do have to drop off for some other things, but we'll see. I might have time to come back a bit later.
Alright.
If I'm still awake, we'll see. Right.
No worries. Well, I will get Hive Time stuff started, and I will invite Aubrey to come and say hello.
See you.
Have a good one. Alright, that's Bad Egg. Again, as the largest game that I worked on this year, I think it's also like the most. It feels more whole and more complete than most of the other. Like as far as I don't like to call them solo projects, because obviously I had collaborators. Like I had Peter working with me, and I had plenty of people playing and testing the game and giving some feedback. And it doesn't make sense for me to say that it was my own project. But as far as a project that is that I'm project lead on, and that I am like the primary developer of, and that there aren't a lot of other creative influences within, I feel like Bad Egg has coalesced into the kind of game that I was intending to make, and that's pretty cool and exciting. But next we're going to talk about Hive Time, and I have Aubrey Serr here. Hey Aubrey, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just getting the game up and visible. There it is.
I was just thinking about what you were saying earlier about how it feels to sort of like do a year in review, and like I don't know how it is for other people, but for me it's very, very easy for me to forget all the stuff that I worked on in a year, and end up at the end of the year thinking like, where did that year go? What did I do?
What did I do? Yeah.
Did I do anything? You know?
I have this Patreon thing going on, and every month I write a recap of what I did during the month. And it's wordy, like it's a chance for me to just do a bit of a brain dump and a heart dump about whatever it is that I've been working on, and at the very bottom I just do a bullet list so that anybody who doesn't want to read all that mess can still know what's going on. But every time I write one of those, I am always surprised at how much stuff there is. There's always stuff that I've forgotten about. There's always more than I imagined. And then when it comes time for me to do this stream and the accompanying post that goes with that, I always find that there's more. there's more that I've, even though I wrote about everything month to month, there's still stuff that I completely forgot about. And yeah, it is interesting.
To start doing that.
I think we move on, right? Like we clear our heads space of the things that we work on, and we just try and focus on the next thing, and it can be really easy for that to wash away the memory of stuff that we've done, and take away some of that opportunity to learn from, I guess, and grow from that stuff. Like I think if we don't do the reflection, we don't we don't get any of that.
And I mean, even if it's not for personal growth, even if it's just merely like a victory lap, like,
Yeah.
why are we doing all of this stuff? Isn't it to feel like ultimately like that you accomplished something, right? Like, you don't take the time to actually feel accomplished. Like, it doesn't.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that's a. I don't know if I'd necessarily fixate on accomplishment specifically, but fulfillment being a part of that, or that being a part of fulfillment, like fulfillment for sure. I feel like unless you do take the time to unpack and make sure that you're maintaining that relationship with your work, it's very difficult, or more difficult to find fulfillment in it, I think.
I think so too.
Yeah. So in December of 2020, I did the Hiveversary update for Hive Time, which was a big update that had a whole bunch of... basically, I was expecting that I wouldn't be doing the other stuff on, like the other long-term stuff on the Hive Time roadmap, and I wanted to try and tidy up a bunch of loose ends and cross off a lot of to-do items from those future updates, as many as I could squeeze in with the time that I had available. And something that we had talked about wanting to do for that was getting some new portraits in, but at the time you weren't available. You had another project you were working on. Actually, I think you had a couple projects you were working on. And that's fine. Like, it's not like I gave you a lot of notice, and it's not like it's something that we agreed on. It was more a case of if our availability aligns, this would be cool to do, and it didn't. But we managed to find time to come back and do that again here for a little patch that we did. I think for World B Day, was it the World B Day patch that
I believe so.
that stuff went in for? Yeah. So I'm going to use some debug commands here to show this stuff off rather than playing the game, because the content that we're talking about here is actually kind of rare in the game. So I've got a little debug thing here that lets me spawn a rare queen. And we'll go through them one by one. So I have these rare decrees that I added to the game. And the idea with the decrees is that there are ways of providing variations to the default gameplay that, like, the default decrees are just like halved lifespan for bee sitters, or double honey production, or whatever. It's like a balance of 2 negative and 1 positive trait, with the idea of just changing all of the balance points so that you've got something new to learn with each subsequent queen. But I also had this idea of it would be cool to have like another layer beyond that, where there are these rare decrees that provide a more dramatic change. And so this one is bear pheromones, and what it does is, I think we can chase it up in the Bpedia, maybe. Let's go have a look. Queen. Oh, it hasn't shown it. Never mind. That's a bug that I'm going to have to fix. Oh no, it hasn't shown it because I spawned it using a cheat. But anyway, bear pheromones means that bear attacks occur way more frequently than they otherwise would. We have another one which is wasp taunter, which means that wasp attack events spawn more quickly than they should. Honestly, those two are the least interesting of the rare queen effects. We have this one which is extravagant, which means that construction costs are increased, and we're gonna see the portraits for these. I got Aubrey to do a portrait for each one. We'll look at them in a second once I get through the list. That way we can see them all at once. Bespoke materials only means you don't get anything back from destruction, so no recycled resources. It's not particularly, it's not a big deal. A lot of people don't smash stuff in their hives and don't expect to get those resources back, but I feel like for those who it does, like it does surface and highlight. I mean, that's I think the main idea with this is that the rare decrees are about highlighting something about how the game works, or something about how the mechanics work.
One thing you mentioned on Bat Egg was how you made a game that you yourself would still be able to play. But how did that figure into these rare decrees?
Yeah, that's definitely a thing for the rare decrees. Was was trying to come up with new things to do. I mean, obviously, because I designed them and because I tested them, I already knew how to cope with those. But it was really fun and interesting from a development standpoint to explore the impact that they had, because I don't know what that is until after I've implemented it, right?
Right.
We can jump across to a new Hive, and that way we can see the portraits, and that's going to make them all a lot easier to talk about. So if we start with, what was the first one? First one was like bear pheromones, which has a queen here blowing some perfume on herself. So this creates, or basically makes events that destroy your hive much more likely, and so you have to put a lot more effort either into defense or into keeping enough redundancy throughout your hive, because I usually play without defense, but keeping enough redundancy through your hive so that any individual attack that you receive is something that you have enough resources and enough stuff to recover from. Like, no matter where the bear hits, it's not going to take out all of your jelly storage because you've got to spread it around everywhere. Is the kind of thing that I think that this decree can expose, and that's something that I had the opportunity to like play with during development of the game originally, while sort of getting all the other mechanics in place. But having something in place that enforces that, or specifically creates the regularity of those recovery opportunities, did make me feel like I was exploring a new aspect of the game. And Wasp Taunter is the same kind of thing. Whereas Wasp Taunter, there it is. But for Wasp Attack. But so those two kind of go together in a bit of a lump. But if we look at something like Shared Immortality is like the number one standout big thing, because it answers the question of, there's a lot of people who go, I wish my bees lived longer, and as a designer I know that the longer the bees live, the less readable the simulation is, because you have to wait for bees to die before they can be replaced, and the results of your management decisions actually take effect and become visible. And so Shared Immortality is, the idea behind it mechanically is that no bees die of old age. It means that they all hang around, and suddenly the way that you have to interact with population management is entirely different. You don't have the population churn allowing you to change your mind about the makeup of your hive. You've either got to find ways to live with what you've got and expand your hive, and be thoughtful about how the sliders are when you do expand your hive, so that all that new space that you've unlocked, so that you're having some control over that. But the other option is to try and game the game in a way that allows you to find creative ways of killing your bees, which there are a couple of options for sending your bees off to their death, and use that to keep your population down and have a little bit more flexibility over how it works. But yeah, I do think it did give me an opportunity to feel like I was playing a new game and feel like I was playing something unexpected. And the decrees in general were always about providing new balance points and unexpected combinations. So to answer that question in a long-winded fashion, yes.
I ask because it's been a big question on my mind. Obviously, like you helped me a lot with my game tracklist, but it's the sort of game where all the content's planned in advance.
Yeah.
And, by the end of development, I was speedrunning the whole game in around 35 minutes.
Yeah.
And even when I was trying to like play it differently, that's just not possible, not with a kind of adventure game.
Yeah.
I would really like my future projects to be something that I can personally play, because if you can't play it in the way that a player is intended to play it, you can't really tell what you've got.
it's a handicap, right? Like it feels like a handicap.
Yeah.
If you can't see your own work. And I think this is why roguelikes are so popular.
Right.
Is not necessarily. I mean, players enjoy it, sure. But I think that there's a lot more opportunities to feel like you're giving yourself interesting experiences while you're developing, so they become fun to make.
Right.
And because of that aspect, it's easier to maintain motivation. It's easier to maintain focus when you're doing that kind of thing. I think with multiplayer games as well, you hear about large teams developing multiplayer games, and they always talk about spending a long time playing.
Right.
And I think because games are so hard to make, and it's so easy to wind up in a situation where you're partway through development and you realize that things aren't working, or you've lost a lot of motivation. You decide, okay, well, I need to put this on hold and work on something else because I'm not doing my best work. Like if it turns out that these kinds of generated games or games that are provide the developers with unexpected or interesting content, like just statistically, that's got to make them more likely to be successful, or more likely to make it through development.
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
But it's a trap as well.
I agree.
I think it's a trap as well, because as a designer, you're better able to focus on particular aspects of an experience that you've made, and just kind of fill the rest in with your imagination, or ignore the rest because you already know about it, right? And so I think about stuff like Honeycomb Crunch, and I guess Bad Egg to a degree, where Honeycomb Crunch in particular, my focus as my development focus, my design focus was get to the part that's interesting as quickly as possible. And so it gets real hard real fast, and that's not fun for a lot of people. In my mind, I'm like, you play for 10 seconds, you play for 20 seconds, you get your 5 seconds worth of enjoyment, or 10 seconds, or however long, if you're playing for a minute, maybe you get 20 to 30 seconds worth of enjoyment. But you want to get back in and back up to that point where it's hard as quickly as possible, and that's going to move as your skills improve. So want to get the early easy stuff out of the way as fast as possible. And I think it ends up leading you towards situations where you use generative stuff a little bit more. Like, it's easy to use it bluntly, I guess. And so we end up in a situation where culturally generated stuff kind of has a bit of a bad rap. We have a lot of people who are like, oh, if it's RNG, it's bad.
Right.
And that's come from, like, my interpretation is that it's come from developers who have found the thing that they find rewarding in the game and are focused on that, and thought as much about the holistic experience. I think it's really easy to fall into that trap.
Yeah, it's interesting. Kind of one of the classic game design problems, especially when you're a solo, quote unquote solo, like you say, nobody's really solo.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. I want to say ostensibly solo, but that still feels like it's diminishing other people's contributions. But yeah, I know what you mean, for sure.
It's like, even if you literally don't work with anybody else, it's like, did you use Photoshop? Did you, or Blender, or use an open source game engine? Because that's the work of 1,000 people, right?
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous to be like, oh, I did it solo, right? But anyway, we have a certain idea of what it means, in the indie space. So these, quote unquote solo projects, one of the really classic problems is you just make the game too hard.
Yeah.
When you are playing it and you are having fun with it, you tend to be like, oh, well, this is trivial easy. I need something more. And it's like, no, that's 10 times too hard.
Yeah. And it's tricky because you want to, on some levels, you want to have some of that late game content for when players' skills are right up there. Like, you don't want to get rid of that entirely, I don't think, in most cases.
Right.
At least for these kinds of arcade games, anyway.
Right. Yeah, the problem is when it's like, off by an order of magnitude.
Yeah.
Several games that I've worked on came out and were like, kind of designed by like our gamers
Yeah.
who had, sunk like 1,000 hours into their game.
Thinking about a game you worked on in particular, I won't talk in general, but I am thinking of a game that you worked on. Early access lets you have a core audience of players before the game has established its identity, and because those players are just inherently going to be more experienced, it's so easy to tune everything to them.
Right, that happens too. Yeah. Yeah, the game I was thinking about, the game I just finished working, I worked as sort of like a, kind of like.
You are totally welcome to
artist.
bring up any games that you want, like any titles. I figure that's your
I
job to
didn't
do rather
want
than
to
mine.
come on here to like, toot my own horn, but I think it's relevant in this case because it's a roguelike game. I kind of was working on making some props for this game called Fire Girl, and it's just really brutally difficult right off the bat.
Yeah.
And to the point where like your control interface doesn't really feel up to the tasks that you're presented with, and the game eventually gets fun, actually gets good, but like the first couple of hours you're just sort of grinding away in this really brutal meat grinder like game, and like a lot of these games where you can upgrade stuff, it gets easier and easier as you get through the game, and like I don't think this was anybody's real design intent. Like it's often a problem, but it's like I can imagine the core team working on this game and thinking like, yeah, what's the problem? It's definitely not too hard, and in fact it's like 10 times too hard.
Yeah, it's tough. I think about Don't Starve. Like Don't Starve feels like it's the poster child for this kind of stuff that we're talking about, where it had a lengthy early access period, and at launch almost everything in it was tuned to that early access audience, and the game, as I think it was intended, was completely impenetrable. And then after release they went back and they've effectively kind of remade the game a bunch of times. Which is interesting. Like I find it really, really interesting. So like Shipwrecked is effectively like an entirely separate game from what I understand. I haven't played enough of it to really get onto it, like have a good solid sense of its identity, but I think it's like it's the same game. You're intended to explore and discover how things interact and how recipes work and how resources interact and work, but I think it's a little bit easier. And I know Reign of Giants as well was about trying to reframe things so that it was less about just going to a wiki and looking everything up. That you still have this sense of uncertainty about what you're doing and how you do it. It's really difficult. Really difficult. I know with Bad Egg, I tried to keep everything that felt natural to me, was how I tuned the hard difficulty, and tried to have 2 discrete steps below that for normal and easy. I don't know how successful I was in making it approachable, but I hope.
So yeah, as someone's asking like, hey, who am I? Like who's the ghost? And I worked on these screen portraits like this one that's on the screen here.
Yeah,
these were just a ton of fun to make.
Do you have a favorite of these?
Of the new set, let me see. Because like you mentioned, I was really busy around that time, and I wanted to do these. But it was it was just I was trying to wrap up the very last stuff for for track lists, the rewards stuff.
Yeah.
And like just trying to put like literally 3 years of stuff behind, kind of behind me.
Yeah.
I know these. I just was just looking at all of these because I was like, oh yeah, these are cool.
Well, hang on, I can bring them up. Let me bring them up to
Yeah,
make them bigger in game or on the stream, providing I can find the right folder. Where is it? There it is. Yeah, I think I'd given you just descriptions of what the rare decrees did, and let you do whatever you felt was appropriate.
Yeah, I think so too.
Oh, that's right. OBS is a little bit confused about how this is meant to work. Let me see if I can sort this out. Alright, there we go. That should probably be visible. Boonk. That'll do. So this is a slightly larger look at the.
Yeah, I just found them here on my end too.
I'm really happy with how they came out. I mean, we talked. I don't know. I think it was last year we talked about it, and we said that the Hive Time has these different layers of presentations of the bees. Like what you see in the simulation is kind of your sort of abstractish view of the hive and its population. What we see in the vignettes is like more true to who those bees are, but what we see in the portraits is how those bees see themselves. And I really like that aspect. And you talked about that being like a key part of portraiture in general. And I found that like a really fun and interesting thought to explore.
Yeah, I mean, like, on the surface, these are all queen bees, and you think like, oh, well, like, how can they really be that different? But I really like this one. This one's really good. I think it's maybe a toss-up between.
Was that the extravagant one?
Yeah, extravagant. I think it's either a toss-up between the mom bee or the extravagant one.
Yep. So in addition to the rare decree ones, we also did a couple of generic ones, including this eye patch bee and this cool bee. I love how just really enjoy the colours of the cool bee one. It's very cool. And then the other one was the mum bee you mentioned, which is this one here, with some grubs on her lap. They kind of almost visually evoke corgis, which is kind of fun.
Right. So yeah, but like all of them were a lot of fun to do, and like like at this point, like there's a lot of these. There's a lot of these portraits, and so I was moving through them pretty quickly, all things considered. I mean, they all there's still a significant amount of work per portrait, but
yeah.
But yeah, sort of like moving through them in steps and like trying to keep them all consistent and like matching the quality of the originals. And it's fun to just try to work out like on a kind of macro scale, like where does this image fit in with all the other ones, right? Because it's like you want them to be different colors, you want different compositions, you want different like feeling and character for each one. You want it to portray a character. Also, and obviously, you want these to reflect the gameplay effects. And it was just a fun challenge, just really interesting to try to get them all done. And
I really enjoyed seeing your interpretations of the decrees as well. Like, because obviously I don't have any. Like I said, I didn't give you any. At least I don't think I gave you any specific notes or thoughts on what they should be. So it was a surprise when I got them back. And I think all of them do a good job of communicating something interesting about how the Queen with that decree might see herself. And particularly we think about shared immortality, which effectively breaks population management for the game. But as far as the Queen's concerned, she's hanging out with her friends.
Right.
It's great. And yeah, I think I enjoy this one as well. The science one.
It's really fun, yeah. Because like the effects of this are actually like sort of bad, right? Like what are the gameplay effects of this particular one?
This one doubles the cost of all research.
Yeah, so I thought it was kind of funny, like, well, like how is it that it costs twice as much, right? And it's like it's not that they're bad at science, right? It's that they're like
super focused. Like, they want to do everything 200%.
Yeah, they actually love science so much they don't care about the outcome.
Yeah.
And so like sort of I see myself a lot in this character.
I love it.
Too focused on the process to care about the outcome.
It's so good though, and like all of them are kind of like that. Like none of them are particularly good. Wasp Taunter is, I mean, I can't think of that being anything else, right?
Right.
It's just like they see themselves as a fun prankster person, and it's like, well,
right.
Yeah, but you're also like raining death down upon the Hive, lady. And yeah, like bear pheromones as well. It's like, well, this is my look, this is my image, this is my smell, this is who I am. It's good. And I also like the idea of the Queen who doesn't allow anything to be recycled is just like hyper involved with construction.
Right. Throw it out.
Yep, it's great.
Yeah, the architect.
All of it's great. All of it's great. And this one's like everything costs more. But they see themselves as fancy. Yeah, I love all of them. They're all fantastic.
So yeah, it was really great, like, because I mean we were talking about like obviously it was the last big update. At the time we were talking about the last big update. This was the update after the last big update, right? Like
yeah.
Like I was saying with Trackless, it's just sort of like putting like the final touches on a lot of these older projects.
Yeah.
And it just felt really good to like kind of finish projects, with a bang, like.
Yeah.
Like it was really bothering me that I wasn't able to deliver these. Because I wanted to do them for the earlier update, and it just felt really good to actually finish this stuff with some strength, right? Rather than just like going out, finishing it with just letting it peter out or something.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. Like making stuff is hard in general, and then bringing closure to things that are hard to make, and that maybe you did, maybe you didn't get to do everything you wanted to do. I mean, like, you never get to do everything you want to do, right? Like, that's the nature of things. But yeah, it's almost harrowing sometimes, to be doing this stuff and
right.
And not be able to wrap it up. Like I think it's like if you can't do that, it's not necessarily healthy, and so it is important to take that time to do things. I worked on Flat this year, and I cannot describe. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but I cannot describe how much of a relief, I guess, and how fulfilling it felt to come back and just like I don't think I did a lot of things on it that like dramatically changed the game itself, but everything I did on it made me feel so much better about it as a whole.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the only projects from this last year, the viewers that I haven't actually gotten a chance to sit down and play, which is a shame because, of course, I love first-person shooters.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I
so
assume you
I'm
played it
definitely
back
gonna,
during the original 70
yeah,
FPS.
for
Yeah.
when it came out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So so yeah, I definitely need to check out the changes. This should be fun for me too.
Yeah. So as far as other Hive Time stuff that I did this year goes, I did another. So other stuff that I put into that. Let me get one of each. Let me get one of each role up and happening here. Do we already have one of each role? Yes, we do. Okay, good. I don't know what I'm doing. I know, like, I made this game. I have no idea how it works. Shift N should give us what we want. Brilliant. And we got a special B here. Oh, it's a really, really small special B. You know what? Give me a better special B. Give me a bigger special B. You got any like really big ones? That's not one. That's a little one. Ah. Is it Control N? There we go. I just like make a whole bunch and then we'll get a big one. That's a big one. That'll do. Alright, so one of the things I did was make new hats. Because new hats are important. Let's go back to the worker and we'll... Did I make... Oh yeah, I did. Okay. So I think the bog roll was new, maybe? And that's a reference to Supply Chain, another management sim that I made. Like, I wanted to make a minimal management sim or a minimalist management sim, which is like it's the only controls you have are these like 4 sliders for controlling how much or how frequently a point in a supply chain is resupplied. So like you choose how frequently the warehouse gets more stock, and you choose how frequently the shop gets more stock, and you choose how frequently people go out to the store to get more stock, to get more stuff. And the idea is that you try and find some balances, and then you discover that no matter, like, the more that you optimize it, the more brittle it becomes if some unexpected event happens. The idea is that it's meant to be a thought experiment about the fragility of just-in-time supply chains, which is kind of topical right at the moment. And I think we've got something like a third of our supply chain workforce is currently isolating and unable to work, which has created a lot of fun and interesting and distressingly foreseeable problems. Like, anyway. So I wanted to have a reference to that in there. I also made this very nice top hat here, and a cool monocle, which you can't see from this angle, so hopefully this bee will turn around at some point and let us see this giant monocle that they're wearing. Nope. Don't bother showing us the monocle. It's cool. Yeah. Anyway, it's kind of slightly hexagonal, which is fun. And I think that's it for the worker, yeah. And then the forager's got this kind of like transparent visor thing, which is it's the froggy hat from Disco Elysium. It just doesn't have the eyes on it. And I also got around to making the tech helmet from Honeycomb Crunch. Which I don't know. Did I tell you that the splash image for Honeycomb Crunch, the bee on the main menu, I had drawn and was sort of inspired by and maybe drawing upon work that I'd seen you do when you were streaming art. Your approach to drawing characters and painting stuff. I don't necessarily believe that I painted anything as good as you do. I think your work is much higher caliber than mine. But it was, while I was painting it, I was constantly thinking about stuff that I'd seen you stream and stuff that I'd seen you do. So I guess indirectly you've played.
Streaming, yeah. It's kind of fun to do those art streams.
Yeah, it was cool. But yeah, you kind of indirectly played a role in that in that existing, which is kind of cool. And I also did. Oh, that's it. I think I just did 2 hats for each role. So we'll have a quick squiz through the others. So I made just like a white headband, which I've called a hachimaki here, which is like the Japanese word for it. If we could turn around, we'll see it there. It's got a little knot on the side as well. I just reused the bandana mesh for that because I'm got to do as much with as little as possible, and I put a saucepan on the head as well. And I think maybe the firefighter hat was new too. Yeah, I wanted to do stuff that was a little bit less militaristic and a little bit more either fun or silly. So the saucepans, obviously, that kind of like, you know, kids stick pots on their heads and stuff, and that's a funny thing. The builder got a hammer on their head, and I made safety goggles. And maybe the pencil was new as well. I've lost track. I don't remember which ones are new. So this is like one of those big, broad construction pencils, which are kind of fun. I did. Was that it? We did the defender. We did the forager. We did the worker. We did the bee sitter. No, we didn't do the bee sitter. What did the bee sitter get? They got a sweatband, which is again me reusing existing assets. We got an apple with a worm coming out of it, and a stack of books. And then we got builder. Okay, yeah, we've seen all those. And then I also did a whole bunch of queen hats, but hang on. What is the best way to do this? Is it new queen hat? I don't know what the effect is called off the top of my head. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so I can just run through this. I think that's an old one. And it's going to choose them randomly, so that's fun as well. Tiny top hat is old. The shark hat is new. I made that for Shark Week. As one of Hive Time's players, is one of Hive Time's most vocal and supportive players is very into sharks, and so I was happy to do the shark hat for Shark Week. The beehive is new, and originally I was going to do like a beehive hairdo, and then I decided that an actual beehive was funnier and easier to make look like hair with the like a beehive with this low poly thing. The cheese is old. What else is new? I know I did a couple more. The bow is new as well. There's a streamer that I watch sometimes whose streamer name is Girl with a Bow, and she saw this game being played and she was like, why is there no bow hat? So now there's a bow hat. Oh, there we go, that's the one that I was looking for. So there's also this bad egg nest with a bunch of bad eggs in it. Which you know, it's like you've got this space in the game where you can put things that aren't necessarily, you know, a part of the game or part of what's going on. Like, why not stick references to your other games in there? You know, the hats are like the least disruptive place I can put them.
I think it's kind of funny about how in a game that only has the bare minimum of what it needs isn't really a game. Like, it's only really a game when it has surprises, more Easter eggs, that kind of stuff. I don't know, maybe this is just my opinion or whatever, but it's like there's something off about a game that's only what it needs to be.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And it's really all of the other stuff that makes it fun, usually.
So how do you feel about stuff like Tetris? Or do you feel like Tetris, like the gameplay just inherently provides you with enough surprises?
I'm not sure. You know, I played an enormous amount of Tetris, the Game Boy, original Game Boy version, specifically when I was a kid. And definitely back in that era, I think even at that time, the game felt a little bit old school, you know, like Asteroids, you know, those kinds of games just have a lot less in them. And
I think Tetris in particular is focused on making you, like, providing you with opportunities to make mistakes and then demanding that you find ways to recover from them. And I think that creates a level of dynamism that you don't have with like a jigsaw puzzle, for example.
Right. But one of the things that comes to mind, like when you ask me about Tetris, is that this version of Tetris that I played, the Game Boy one of the very first things that you do before you start the game is you get to decide what you want for your background music. And they had, I think, 3 options. And that when you eventually lost, it would tally up your score and show you like a little scene based on like how high your score was and with little Nintendo characters. So like to me, yes, that stuff was like very, very important in my experience of the game.
Yeah, that's cool.
Kind of like the music is a sort of like a character select, right? It's like about self-expression. More than it is like anything else. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never played that version of Tetris. Like the version of Tetris I played was just nothing but Tetris. I don't even think it had multiple music tracks. But I also feel like if you're not, in my mind, all art is pretentious, because you always have pretense. You always have something. You always have something that you want to communicate. Like even if you're not necessarily conscious of that, like you're still presenting something. And the fact that you are inviting other people to engage with your work, that is just by nature pretentious. And I don't think that's negative. I think in fact, I think that's healthy, because otherwise, if you don't have that, then you're never saying anything, and I think it's difficult for your work to have any meaning without that. So it's fine. It's not a bad thing. But I think there's like the flip side of that. Like that aspect of art is about what you're asking other people to engage with, but there's another aspect which is about like what you engage with while you're making it, and there's like this self-indulgence aspect as well.
Right.
And I feel like those are distinct, right? Like I feel like one is an external thing and one is an internal thing. And when I think about the role that Easter eggs and little bits and pieces like these hats and stuff play in games, often a lot of them come from places where developers are indulging themselves, and doing something that they find fun while they're making it. And a lot of the hats, that's where they come from me. And I think, like, again, you talked about the portraits being about like trying to explore and think about how these characters within the game, which, like, as far as the simulation goes, are not presented as having a lot of character. So, like, it's at some level, I think that's also part of that indulgence type thing of like you kind of go, well, what can I find that makes this interesting for me about doing this stuff? Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I was actually having a conversation earlier today about like why do I make single player games? Like why am I less interested in like more interested in single player than multiplayer? And basically it comes down to this desire to communicate ideas, like and that's why I do it. That's why I make video games. That's it in a nutshell. I want to communicate, and sometimes it is self-indulgent to like include an Easter egg for me, but it's also just another aspect of like sharing the game with people, right? Yes, there's a human being here, and yes, like I made stuff, and yeah, it's
and like you say, like that stuff ends up
graffiti.
becoming a part of the experience for other people, and something that adds character to and helps define the work as a whole. So it's like it has that external value as well.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. It's definitely difficult to like suss out why, like why do you do any of it? Is it all self-indulgent? Is it really all for the player? Is it, some sort of mix, right? Like, because definitely I'd like, like I think everybody wants an audience for their work, right? Like that's like it's not really a game if nobody ever plays it, right? Like, and so
I spent a lot of my very early game dev experiences making stuff that was for myself.
Right.
It's like back before the internet was a thing, so I didn't. It's not like I had options.
Right.
Anyway, but yeah, it's like that's and art as well, like drawing and sketching and stuff. Like there's lots of stuff that
Yeah.
I'll draw that is just for me, and it's. But I think the more I think about it, the more I feel that is me communicating with myself, and that
Right.
that the work becomes like a way of abstracting whatever it is that I'm saying in a way that I can then step back from and appreciate something about it. And yeah, it is definitely
I
about
definitely,
communication, I think.
you know, like that's a good point. Definitely, like I was saying earlier, I have a tendency to do that too, where I just sort of like into the process for the sake of the process, and like I'm trying to get better, better at making stuff for other people.
Yeah.
And just like kind of meeting people halfway, kind of giving more entry, like more a better entry point into the work, and just like being more honest about like my desire to like communicate with other people in this medium.
Yep.
So yeah, I definitely drawn way too much stuff, made too many projects I never showed anybody.
Yeah.
And
I think it is
they
healthy
were
to put your stuff out
useful.
there
Yeah.
as well. But yeah, it's like I think what you can draw out of it as a creative person, I think like it's easy for people who don't make stuff to not think about or consider that. But I think it's
Right.
really important because if you don't have that, like it's the same as not reflecting on your work. It's just like it's really hard to have a healthy relationship with your work if you're not getting something out of it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go through them all, but on the note of giving character to these characterless characters in the game, I also went through and wrote over 100 vignettes as part of the World B-Day patch that we were talking about. And I think this is one of them, about the queen playing chess and turning all the pawns into queens at the start of the game. Yeah, I wanted to... I always felt like that vignettes would be something that I would add to the game as time went on. Like they're easy little things to write, and it's nice and simple to put stuff in. It's like modular content that doesn't have a lot of overheads. Most of them reuse the same art, and it's there are exceptions like this one. I one of the changes that I made was made it so that some vignettes could have unique art, which means that this one has like a bee putting honey under their eyes to help them focus. And I want to show that there. There's one about a bee eating lots of wax, and so they've got like wax crumbs all over themselves. And so yeah, I felt like when I released the game, vignettes were like a thing that I was always putting off, right? It was always... What am I saying? Because it's such small content and it's easy to write, it's like it's easy to put that off till later. And when the game shipped, it didn't really have very many vignettes. I think there were like only 3 Jelly Refinery vignettes, and so it was easy to see a lot of repetition. And part of that whole like trying to do the last update and trying to wrap things up and trying to make sure that the game was... I mean, I was always happy with the state that the game was in. Like my qualifier for release was that I could be content if I could never work on the game again. But that said, there's always things that you want to do, and part of wrapping up as much of that as possible was writing a whole bunch of new vignettes. And so I went through, and now each one has at least 17. And you can play through a couple queens worth of game before you start really seeing all of those repeat. Obviously they cycle through independently. They're their own lists, so it's down to what shows up at the time. So these production ones will repeat faster than the generic ones, but the generic ones are used to pad those out, so that helps as well. But yeah, I wanted to go through and add a whole bunch more. There's one about the queen. Let me see if I can find that one. It's like that she stayed up all night listening to like a band or something on the radio. And I can't find it. I can't remember what it's called. But it uses like the tired variant of the Queen thing. I don't know. I'm blind. I can't see it. It's one of these. Let's pretend that we found it and it was really good. Hang on. Maybe it's this one. Nope. But yeah, so I was really happy to get a whole bunch more vignettes in there. Was really happy to do that. And then the other thing that
I thought that was a really cool part of the game was for those vignettes. That's one of the things that made it quite a bit different than a lot of
right other management sims.
Games.
Yeah, because that was something that always stood out to me. Because I played tons of SimCity, the original SimCity back in the 80s. Was one of my favorite games, and it's like these kinds of games are focused on giving you these very broad-reaching tools to control things and adjust things and tweak things and change things. And so, like, fundamentally, the games are about abstracting away the minutiae, and the sort of collateral damage of that is that you abstract away all of the humanity of the individuals within the simulation. And I really wanted to do something to try and bring some characterization to the forefront, especially since this is about generational communities. It's very easy to end up with this idea that individual bees don't matter, they're not important. But I wanted to do something that just said, every bee has its own hopes and dreams and favorite band and movies that they hate and stuff. Like that was really important to me to try and bring that humanity back in, because I think that's, when you think about generational communities, it's really important to recognize that they're comprised of individuals. They're not a thing that exists without that,
Right.
So yeah, it was definitely something that I wanted to have be a strong element in the game. And I'm glad that people respond to it, because I wasn't sure how clearly readable that intent was going to be. I wasn't sure how much people were going to, see that and value that. But it seems like it's something that people have understood, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it's really kind of profound. Like you say, it's like, oh yeah, because you do realize, like, yeah, okay, well, the society I live in isn't that different from this. I am sort of like one of these worker bees,
Yeah.
And like, I'm not going to be around forever. But your work might,
Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted this, like, in my mind, this is 1000% about human communities. It just looks like bees. Or the things that I wanted to say were things about human communities. But one of the other changes that I made towards the end of the year, so Hive Time had its second birthday in December, and I did a new trailer, and had a couple of other things I wanted to do. I found some bugs, and basically, I think in sort of April or May, May was when I shipped the World Bee Day update, and then I think in July, August or something, I'd done a couple of bug fixes, and that work had gotten to a scale where I was like, okay, well, maybe it makes sense to hold off and ship this on the game's birthday so that it can feel like it's something that's more substantial. And one of the things that I did, after those bug fixes was give some attention to reworking some of the management systems that I had given the least amount of attention to, which are foraging and defense. And while I think these screens still feel fairly cluttered, I feel like they're a bit less cluttered now than they were previously, and I think that, like, mechanically they're easier to engage with. So the foraging screen now offers you the ability to, if you've got an upgraded map room, to influence which resources you're going to be getting back. You can sort of tell your foraging bees to prioritize pollen or nectar, and while I think that doesn't necessarily lead you towards engaging with the foraging mechanics as intended, or engaging with like the storage or reserves levels as intended, I think it does give more possibility space to explore when responding to resource shortfalls or resource surpluses. And I think gives players a little bit more agency with how that works. So previously, this space down here was full of instructional text that nobody read, And so all that's being moved now into tooltips here that I think make that information more discrete and more contextual and more accessible. Because like if it's just a big block of text here, you're like, okay, big block of text, I don't want to read that right now, I want to engage with this stuff. But if you see something and you're like, what is this question mark, and you mouse over it, then you're actively looking for that specific piece of information. That specific piece of information is what's being delivered to you.
Tooltips are really awesome.
Yeah. I think there's even more text here now than there was previously, and it just feels easier to engage with. So I feel a lot happier about how that's presented to players, and I feel a lot happier about being able to provide another tool. Because previously it was a case of, if you don't want to engage with foraging, there's nothing in the foraging management screen. If you don't want to engage with this like foraging map thing, there's nothing there for you. Whereas now there is, and that makes me feel a bit better. Defense as well used to have a bunch of text down here, and buttons were arranged slightly differently. I've pushed stuff back into to the tooltips as well, but I've also like mechanically changed how deployment works. It used to be that the slider set an absolute value of hang on, let's get an exit in there so it's not complaining anymore. The slider used to set an absolute value of bees that would be deployed based on the number of defenders you had at the time you set the slider, which sounds really convoluted in hindsight. I knew at the time that it was a bit clunky, but my thought was that I really wanted it to be... I didn't want to rehash the percentage thing that the like population management screen does. I wanted it to be a different expression, and the idea of making that an absolute number rather than a percentage like just seemed to make sense. But the problem was that you would have a bear attack and you would jump in here and you would push this slider all the way up, and you'd have like 4 defenders at the time, and it would say, okay, well you're deploying 4 out of 4 defenders, and then you would go and you would mess with your population, and by the time Albuffalo arrived you would have 24 defenders, but because you didn't go and fiddle with the slider again, only 4 were deployed. And that's just not in line with the kind of gameplay that I wanted to provide through all of the management screens. Like, I wanted them to be things where you could just set them once and not mess with them again, if that's what you wanted, or you could micromanage them a lot if that's what you wanted to do. And so the manifestation of that previous implementation was just, if you didn't micromanage it, then it was useless. So now what you set is an absolute number of bees per barracks. So like, I want to deploy 2 bees per barracks. I have two barracks cells, so that one upgraded cell counts for 2. That means that it's deploying a total number of 4. And the nice thing about that is that that number will scale as your hive grows. And I feel like that definitely goes more towards that whole optional micromanagement aspect than it previously did. And I think it's a bit easier to read as well, and to understand what that means. Because now it says total deployed per barracks, as opposed to like, total deployed 4, and you don't know what that's going to mean moving forward. The other thing I did was change how the buttons work. These, instead of being a sort of one-off, click it to deploy all of your bees, and then they'll stay out there until they die, and new ones will just stay inside and respect the slider. This now just overrides the slider, totally disables the slider, and that's you can either tell everybody to go outside until you turn it off, or everybody to stay inside until you turn it off, or you just turn it off and have the slider come back. And I just feel like all of that is just more easy to understand. I don't know if it's necessarily intuitive, but it is easier to understand what the future implications of those actions are going to be. So yeah, I feel a lot better about defense and foraging both. I don't know if those are aspects of the game that you ever messed with much, Aubrey.
I haven't played this newest update. I agree that the original one was a bit confusing, because I did look at it. It's like,
yeah,
how does this work? But
yeah.
I wasn't sure exactly.
It definitely was not clear. at all, and I'm very happy to have put it into a sort of different, reframed it in a way that makes it easier to understand and engage with. What do we got here?
Yeah, I think it
It's the
looks cool
chess one.
though. I'm like, oh yeah, I should play this new update because like this will definitely make it easier, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and I like the idea of like one thing this priority slider might do for foraging is it might help players understand how resource shortfalls and resource like organic shortfalls and organic surpluses work, because like if you are collecting two things at the same rate, and you use one a little bit more than another, but then from that point forward you use them all an equal amount, you'll always have a surplus of one because that's what you've got more of, and if you're consuming them at the same time, you're going to use them the same amount, and you're never going to balance that back out. And I've seen players go, oh, like it's so hard to get nectar, and it's like, well, no, it's not that it's so hard to get nectar, it's that you had unused pollen, and the unused pollen is hanging around. Like both of them are being in like a hive where you've got everything, you've done all the research and you've built all the infrastructure and stuff. They kind of come in at the same rate and they are consumed at the same rate. But it's interesting to see like players, depending upon the route that they took through the research path and how they ended up using or spending resources or what events they ended up experiencing, come away with the impression that one resource is harder to get than another. And I think having the priority slider there allows players to respond to that, and then in responding to that, hopefully gain a little bit more insight into how the simulation works and just like what the nature of these kinds of things ends up being. I hope. Who knows? It's always hard to know how someone's going to interpret something, but I do feel good about giving more opportunities to interact with that area of the simulation.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. But I feel like we've talked a lot about Hive Time and about other stuff, and it's probably getting close to time to move on to another game. Is there any further things that you want to say or talk about before we disappear?
Just like thank you very much for having me on. It's always fun. I always look forward to these. So hopefully we can work on something in this year so that I can be on the next show.
Yeah. I would love that if the opportunity arises. It is always a pleasure to talk to you, and I always feel like we talk about interesting stuff. And I was again very glad to get some more portraits in there because they are one of my favorite features in Hive Time, and being able to expand that. One of the other things I didn't mention it before, but I took one of the portraits that was done in 2000. I think you did it in 2019, maybe at the end of the year.
Yeah, maybe.
One of the portraits that we had in the pool previously, I took that out of the pool, and that was the one of the 3 stink bugs in the trench coat portrait, which I think you did unprompted. Like I don't think I told you to do that. I think you were just had seen that in the game and thought it was funny. And so I made it so that portrait only shows up if you get the vignette about the queen pretending to be 3 stink bugs in a trench coat. And I really like. It was cool to have it in there from the beginning, but I think it's even cooler when it, for a player, when it's responding to something that you've seen,
Yeah, for sure.
Because if you haven't got that vignette and you don't have the context for it, it's just a weird thing. But when you do have the context for it, it is in response to the vignette that you've had that makes it more exciting. So I was happy to do that. But yeah, so hang on, let me get the queen to wave, and then we'll we'll say goodbye. Is it wave 1? Hey, there we go. Well, that'll do. That was the wrong thing, but yeah. Goodbye. There we go. And we got the wave. All right. Well, thank you again, and I will catch up with you another time. And I'm gonna move over to Cloud Courier next, which is another game that I made.
Good. All right. I'll be watching the stream.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right. Let me get that stuff up and happening. Let me also nudge Albuffalo. and click this button and close that thing and get some Cloud Courier up and happening. Yeah, I'm sure that I will do more updates for Hive Time, or more patches, sorry, that look at things like adding a few more vignettes on World B Day, or adding some more hats or something. Like I think we'll probably continue to do that. But I don't expect that I'll be doing any more so like really big updates to it. And as far as the shape of the game goes, I'm very happy to I just feel so final. I'm very happy to be leaving it, or I'm happier to be leaving it in the state that it's in now compared to where it was at the beginning of 2020. So yeah. Anyway, the next game that we're going to talk about is Cloud Courier, which is a game that I made for the Stop Waiting for Godot Jam last year with Albuffalo and local hoster. Let me just crank that music down just a touch. And I have Albuffalo here with me in chat, who did all the very, very wonderful art in this game. Let me bring the game up and make it visible. There it is. Hello, how are you?
Doing well. How about you?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. Been going a little bit longer than I had intended, but we've made it to Cloud Courier, and apologies for keeping you waiting there. But yeah,
I've been watching it in the not so much in the background. I've just been watching it.
Yep.
I just had the Discord audio on, and I'm like, "Whoa, how is Cheese talking about these hats when they haven't shown up on screen yet?" I was like, "Of course."
Yeah, I imagine it's probably like 10-15 seconds.
Maybe, I'm not sure. I don't know what the audio is on the stream, but there was definitely some echoing, and I was like, oh, no, not the echoes.
Yep. So apologies if I'm asking you to talk about things that are not yet visible. But as I said earlier, I would like to invite you to explain what Cloud Courier is in your words.
Oh man, this is harder when you're on the spot. For me, I would describe it as like a cute package delivery game where you fly. Is flying the right word? Where you fly around in a hot air balloon going to these floating islands.
Yep.
But
yeah, I'm like
yeah. Sorry, I'm nervous. You'll
no,
hear
it's
me,
okay. It's totally cool.
Stutter and giggle a lot.
Yep.
Oh man. Yeah.
Where am I even going? I'm like not paying attention. I'm just like
bottom
floating
right
around.
from
There
the
it
list
is.
of the icon.
Yeah, I've got stuff on my desk here for another game that I'm going to talk about. So that like the bottom right corner of the screen is completely obscured for me. All right. So the idea is that you ride these airstreams back and forth across the map to deliver packages to the villagers. Yeah, I wanted to. I always try when I'm collaborating with people. I want to make sure that I am giving the people that I work with opportunities to express themselves creatively and have as much input as, or as little, I guess, as they like into whatever it is that we're working on. Because I figure that if I'm just asking you to make what I would make, then what's the point? I may as well make it myself. And so we had a brainstorming session before we started on this, and I really wanted to give you the freedom to make whatever you felt like making. When I was working on, because the way that the jam panned out was that I had a day before, because like you went to bed when I started, so I had an extra day to work, and I made sure that like everything that I made that was placeholder, I didn't do any like arty type stuff. I wanted to give you the cleanest slate possible.
Yeah, I remember you. They were very like basic shapes, like circles.
They were just
square,
circles, yeah.
Yeah, I do remember that. And I remember thinking, because I think I was expecting more like what you were saying, like what you're trying to avoid in terms of like, oh, you wanted me to, make like part of my own interpretation of what you were saying, and you
Yeah.
wanted me to have. And I was expecting, like, okay, here's what I'm going for, maybe something along those lines, and we'll work from there. And
Yeah.
it,
I mean, I
it threw
don't.
me off because I was like,
I
oh
don't.
my, not in the bad way threw me off, but it was just like, oh no, all I can think about right now is Tintin and
Tang Tang.
and Odin's Spear.
And it's like, I don't mind giving direction if it's wanted, and I think there were a couple cases where, you said you weren't sure on something, or I gave you some feedback on something to sort of guide it in a particular direction, but I wanted to make sure that, like, that initial, what should things look like, I wanted to give you the opportunity to set that, and I think you knocked it out of the park. I think you did a really good job.
Yeah. Part of me is, I don't know if the right word is disappointed in the, or I should contextualize the word, but that I made everything like I guess small. Like I know I sent large files, but I think I expected the camera to be closer.
Yeah.
So a lot of the characters and like how they look and everything, like they have detail to them. Not a crazy amount of detail, but they have detail to them. I'm just like, ooh, the camera's so far back. I did not consider this. And so like some parts become very difficult to read, and all the characters have to stand on top of the houses, and I'm like, oh. Dude.
Yeah. We had originally talked about having like the characters standing on balconies and stuff, and poking their heads out of windows.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where we were working on. This was made for a game jam, and often you find that when you're working on a game jam, you do your best to do as much stuff as you can, but there's always going to be things that don't quite work how you want them to work. So one thing I wanted to do, but we didn't end up doing, was to have, during that period where you've got the little progress bar there while you're doing the delivery, I wanted to make it so that the camera zoomed in a bit while you were refueling and getting your package delivered and stuff, and I think that would have given a lot more visual presence to some of these smaller elements. But yeah, it's tricky because from a gameplay perspective, we need to be able to show a large area of the play space in order for you to have the contextual knowledge to go, oh yeah, I see that there's an airstream over here, this is where I want to go. So if we're too far zoomed in, you don't get to see that information, and it's a lot harder to work with, or a lot harder to navigate the game properly. And I know that after we had some assets, I definitely pulled the camera out quite a bit compared to where it was for my little placeholder stuff. I think as well, maybe it could have been fun to like zoom the camera out when you're like, the faster you're going, the more the camera is zoomed out. Like that might have been a cool thing to do, and that way when you stop to do the delivery or pick something up like organically, that's gonna mean that the camera pushes in. I don't know, it's a whole bunch of different things that we could have done to address that if we had time, I think. But the reality was that like we started halfway through the jam as well.
Yeah, like for me it was a weekend, but like
I think it started on the Friday.
Yeah, you made this game in like less than a week, so like
it's like 2 or 3 days.
Like, I know you're so disappointed for where I put the scale of art in terms of how I displayed the visual information, but like this is, to me, I'm super proud how everything came out. I'm just like, wow, like I felt like I got the easy part. Like, okay, just do the art, and she's doing all the hard programming and all that stuff. So like, I'm just like, wow, this is great.
I think I've talked about it before when talking about where is the airstream down here? Oh, it's down that way. Let's not go there. I think I talked about it before with a previous game that I made called Hidden Star. It's like usually because I'm a programmer, I usually do all the programming, and because I'm an artist, I also do art. And so like what ends up happening is that I see every step of the journey, right? Like when I'm implementing my own art, I see the placeholder art, I see like the half finished, half implemented stuff, and I see it when it's finally doing what it needs to do and is working. But when I worked on Hidden Star, I was just doing the art and someone else was doing the programming, or most of the programming, and there were cases where I didn't see the intermediary steps, and it was like I went to bed and my static, images that weren't really doing much were suddenly brought to life when I woke up. And that's such a powerful feeling.
Yeah.
To see your work become like something more than it was. So I think I can relate to what you're talking about there.
Yeah, like I like looking at the airstreams, like with the little leaves in there. Like I remember when you were like, oh, I think it'd be a good idea to have some leaves, and that will help demonstrate the visual information of like these are airstreams.
Yeah.
And you mentioned like, oh yeah, we can animate that, and I was like, huh? Like, I think I was picturing like frame animation.
That's what I was originally going to try, but it turned out to not be doable. But I really wanted to have the leaves twist and turn as they went through the airstream.
I mean, to me, this is like, it looks great, and to me, this is it looks good. It looks great. I got scared, and I really thought you were talking like frame by frame, like, oh yeah, we'll have the leaf animating frame by frame twist, and I was like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
No.
well, like in my mind, it was going to be like 2 or 3 frames of animation, which like would fit more with like we've got these like couple frame poses for the villages and stuff. Like I didn't want anything that was like higher fidelity than what we had there. So it wouldn't have been a huge amount of work, but yeah, like in hindsight, it probably sounded very daunting to I don't know.
I mean, I could have just been imagining a bigger deal, because like this is definitely my first time working on anything remotely, like I guess art in a collaborative effort.
Right.
So I'm just like, I don't, like, I've done like commissions and requests in the past, but it's just like, again, like usually I'm told exactly what that person wants at that point. Most of the times, not always, but
and you had done some commissioned work for me last year for the previous stream of this nature that I did, where I had to talk about a couple of projects that I didn't actually do any visual work for, which was Starfighter and Hatcher.
Yeah. And
which,
sorry, yes, go on.
Well, I was going to say, do you want to talk about those? Because I feel like you did some work and you weren't around last year and didn't get a chance to talk about it. If you want to talk about it, feel free. But also, those projects are slightly represented here as well, and that's very, very cute and endearing to me.
Yeah. Because I wasn't sure like what to do for. Well, what would they be called? Would they still be called? Yeah, NPCs.
Yeah, the villages.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do for NPCs. I'm like, okay, I don't want to, because of the short time frame. I'm like, I don't think we need too many. Just like 2 different ones is probably enough, like a boy and a girl.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, like, how do I want to draw these characters? And yeah, I remembered the 2 commission pieces I did last year, and I was like, oh yeah, Starfighter and Hatcher, and I don't remember if there was. I think there was a. I know you gave me a description for the main character Starfighter. I don't remember if there was like anything that described his visual appearance aside from like Hive.
I think I was like, give him a rad 80s shirt.
Yeah.
And I think that was mostly it. I think maybe I said like jeans and a jacket as well. I think I'd like talked about wardrobe a little bit, but beyond that, I had
Sure, yeah,
let you
'cause I
do what
remember we were talking
you thought
about
was interesting
things.
as far as the actual like character design went.
Yeah, because I remember with Starfighter, there was talk of like the very colorful jackets, and I'm like, oh, I remember those. I'm a '90s kid, but I do remember those colorful jackets. My parents definitely got them for me and my brother.
Nice.
And yeah, with Hatcher, I think it was just you had sketches already for both of them, actually.
Yeah, just scribbles, I think, for the most part.
Yeah. And I think I don't. Yeah, you did design a character for Hatcher, I think, in the scribble.
Yeah, I think the sketch I did for
like
Hatcher was a little bit more refined, a little bit more established. But I think the Starfighter one was just stick figures.
Might have been. There was definitely more environment in terms of like, okay, this is like, I
Yeah.
kind of want it to be almost a split.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a lot more specificity for the. Whoa, whoops. That shouldn't happen. I had a lot more specificity for the world in Starfighter than I did for Hatcher, whereas Hatcher was more about like the character's relationship with the egg.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And part of it-
I found it very, very touching to see those characters show up here, completely unexpected for me. I was like, wow,
Yeah.
that moved me a lot. I might have teared up just a tiny bit.
Yeah, when I thought about like drawing them again, I was just like, hey, whenever they come out, like I want them to be like, hey, we were always here, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Like wherever the journey takes us, it's like we're part of cheese.
And I
'Cause-
like in
Yeah, because again, it was just a concept before, and it's just like
yeah, they're a
Yeah,
little bit
I-
more real now. And I had
Mhm.
I had intended to work on Hatcher this year. Hatcher was going to be a project that I was going to seek some funding for and develop into a proper game, and I ended up deciding that Bonesweeper was the right project to do that with because it was smaller in scope and easier to pitch.
yeah.
And so it was a little bit sad for me to kind of put Hatcher back on the shelf, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, to see the character again and to see like just be reminded that, you know, even though I'm not working on it right now, that project's still real. Was just a very nice feeling.
Yeah.
And I got to say that with everything that I've seen of your work, both in terms of our collaborations and of the things that I haven't been involved with, I would say that you have a very surprising amount of sensitivity that you express through everything that I've seen that you've done. And I wanted to make note to explicitly and specifically thank you for that, because it's I think it makes both your art and the world that your art exists in a better place.
Oh, thank you. I mean, like, because I do like almost exclusively fan art for my art, and
Yeah.
I do it because I love picturing like scenarios with like the characters I love. It's when I
Yeah.
feel the most happiest with. And because I feel the most happiest with it, I like to try and share that, like almost
Yeah.
like, you know, when their fan fiction is just like it's this person writing their idea, and it's just like, let me share that with you.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't like, oh, like I know even if I draw something and only like it's very niche, only like maybe 3 people will like it, and I'm just like, it makes me happy, and I'm glad those 3 people are happy too.
I
like-
remember
Yeah, I like fun, I like happy, I like joy. So
I remember you did
definitely...
some fan art of Hive Time as well,
Yeah.
and every piece had something, some element to it that expressed knowledge of a, like, just a small discrete part of the game that might otherwise go unnoticed by many people.
Right.
So like there's the old bitey thing, and it's got foragers. It's got foragers and defenders like running away from old bitey, and like knowing that old bitey, like in order to respond to the event that it's specifically about deploying defenders, is like, you know, that shows knowledge of the source material that's a little bit deeper than just a superficial, oh yes, this game has a bear in it. And there was one with the wasps, I think. And there's like
the surprise investigation. I think
yeah,
it was.
yeah, and there's like, again, shows that, you know, you read and paid close attention to the event text and knew about that one particular event that only occurs halfway through a chain that's like one of many. I think there's like 50 or 60 events in the game, so you're not necessarily going to see that all the time. And yeah, I just really appreciated the attention to detail and the sensitivity to the identity of the work that you had.
I will say, thinking back to that fan art, I don't know why. For some reason, I kind of forgot that not all like bees are fuzzy. And I'm just like, oh yes, these are all fuzzy bees. And I remember hearing, I think it was Miriam who was commenting like, oh, the bees are so fuzzy, and it's a different interpretation. I was like, that's right. Bees are not fuzzy. It was.
Well, like
An interpretation, but I'm wondering if I remembered that fact, if I would have changed something, because they're not. I mean,
in the events and vignettes and stuff, they're shown to be fluffy, have very fluffy chests.
Yeah.
But
not on their bottoms.
Yeah.
Just like fluff everywhere.
I think the fluff everywhere is pretty cute. I like it. Oh, and the twins as well. There's like upgraded nurseries give you twins, and yeah, unless you pay attention to a tiny piece of text in the research description, you probably it's super easy to miss that. But you had like a bee sitter carrying twins as well.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't think I noticed the twins.
Really?
I knew I drew twins, but I don't think I actually noticed any group.
Oh, okay.
Oh no!
Well, that's
oh no, I feel like a fraud.
That's
I'm so sorry.
that's a happy accident then.
Yeah, because I was like, okay, like when I played Hive Time, like I was definitely like making a lot of like bees, and like you would see like a couple of bees, like small bees, spawn out around the same time. But like in my head, they were still like, oh yeah, the little grubs are there, but they're not ready to work yet, but they're always there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was just, yes. Sorry, I'm still like, there are twins. Oh no, it's so early.
No, it's cool. It's cool. So if you upgrade your nursery, they have a chance to spawn twins. If a bee spawns at an upgraded nursery. And I was like,
Okay.
that's a way that I can make upgraded nurseries valuable to players. You know.
I definitely upgraded the nursery, but I don't. I shouldn't focus so much on it.
Sorry.
I didn't notice.
I feel bad bringing it up now.
I do like it.
So with Cloud Courier, was there anything that you drew inspiration from, in order to get it to be, you know, to arrive at the style or any specific elements that are in the game?
Well, definitely, I had accidentally caught an episode of Tintin on TV, and I was like, whoa! I'm like, I haven't seen this in forever, and like it stuck with me in terms of like, man, that's still great as a show. I'm really impressed for how old it is. Like it still really holds up.
Yeah.
From that one episode that I saw, but yeah, and then it reminded me of The Little Prince. Which I had seen maybe a month or two before.
Yeah.
And I was just like, those were like the two that I was thinking of for like style. And then I guess in terms of not really animation, because like I knew we were doing like to 3 frame or just 2 frame animation was I think the goal, but at the same time I was
Yeah.
playing Odin Sphere, which uses like 2D artwork on like a puppet mechanic. And
Yeah.
I've always been in awe of like how Odin Sphere looked, and I wanted to put a lot of detail, I guess, into the stuff that I drew, like, because I just thought Odin Sphere was so beautiful. It's like I would like to try something like that. Like,
Yeah.
again, it does not read too well from this distance, but
Yeah. I think like I do enjoy the pose. I think they have energy that you can read. You know, obviously I'm playing this in a tiny window. It does look better when you play it on a big screen. But I think you can read
played
like
it full screen, I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see this.
I think the happy animation when you're delivering something is readable, I think, pretty clearly as being, you know, someone jumping for joy because they've got a package. Like, I think it communicates the stuff that it needs to communicate, even if some of the small details are not visible on smaller screens.
Yeah. I
Like-
will say the jumping for joy animation, because by the time I started working on the 2 villagers, you would have already put some of the just about all of the art assets into the game, so I had a much better idea of how it was all piecing together, and I was like, okay, I need to change that up a little. I was just like, okay, a big happy energy for receiving a package, and I wanted them to reach up as if they were trying to grab the package. Or celebrating.
It's a bit of a shame. Well, not a shame, just like the way that it panned out is such that if you approach like a person from above and you're delivering it, then they jump up to meet you, and it just like you're leaning down and it looks natural and it feels good. But if you approach from the below, then they're obscured behind the balloon, and you can potentially miss that, which is kind of sad.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's just like, oh, okay, like.
I don't think it costs the game anything. Like, it doesn't diminish the game significantly.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
But when it works really well.
Yeah, I don't see it as a negative. I see it as like, oh, maybe not a puzzle, but it's just like, oh, that's happening. I can fix that. Like,
you do kind of feel encouraged to approach from the top, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a good word I would think about. Like, I would see it as just encouraging, because it's just like I could make a sprite that's just the person reaching down, and maybe the courier either like an arm forward or like an arm going up.
Yeah.
But it's like I don't know. I feel excited about that. Like, technically, yes, approaching from the bottom doesn't look as natural, but it's just like like it feels almost inspiring. Like an idea comes in.
Yeah. Yeah, like that's another thing where like if we had more scope and more time, maybe we would have experimented with having like different directions to reach in, and like it was very late that I did it, but I made it so that the pilot turns around depending upon which side the villager that they're delivering to is on, and also I make the villagers turn around to face the other direction if you move to the other side, which I think is like, it's only a small thing, but I think it helps carry a lot of the, like, without that they feel a lot less connected.
Yeah, I think it's a really nice touch. Like, just chef kiss.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Yeah, I think the game looks amazing. I'm like really happy with how that came out. I feel like I maybe put more time and effort into focusing on getting all of the implementation stuff done for assets, and didn't focus enough on level generation, which I eventually came back and did another patch that makes level generation a little bit better. Oh, and I also massacred some of your art. Let's laugh at at my alterations, see if we can find one that I messed with.
He's like, did you? I don't remember this.
Yeah. Maybe we don't have anyone on this level. I think I'm gonna run out of fuel. I am. No. Boo.
Wait. Oh.
Yeah, let's go to another level, and we'll get a fresh batch of buildings. I painted this tent, which
yeah,
doesn't.
I was gonna say I really like the tent.
Oh, you like the tent? I was like, this tent looks
I
like
really,
garbage.
especially just as like a little point to be like, hey, here's a new level generation. Like,
Yeah, it's also
I really
like
love
that's where you start. It's like your home. I think it helps communicate the idea that you're like a bit of an outsider, maybe.
yeah.
Yeah, I when I thought of doing a tent, I wanted to do like some crates and barrels and stuff there as well, so like you had some supplies. Oh no, I ran out again. I'm just too busy talking and not busy paying attention.
On villagers, they should give us a little boost of air while we're falling. Be like, here, catch this air.
if you fall past one, it'll refuel you and stop you falling as well, which is kind of nice when it happens.
Oh, okay.
But the radius is quite small. This one here,
Okay.
I added an extra level to,
Oh no, that looks great.
because I needed to have him.
I don't think it's
I
I mean,
needed to have him standing higher than he could stand on the top of the building in order to have the like everything line up with the packages and stuff. So I was like, oh no, how do I make this taller? You're asleep. I don't necessarily want to make it like the building itself bigger, because I think we sort of were happy with how
good
it
scale
looked.
for that small island.
So I just kind of copied the roof and painted out the little window, which it's kind of passable. Looks alright when it's small.
Yeah, I was gonna say from my view, it looks perfectly good.
There was one where
I like it actually. A little additional, or just making the building overall just taller.
Yeah. There was another one where I had to I don't remember which one it was. I had to like repaint some of the grass, or no, maybe I copied some grass onto it so that it had hang on, let me go and get some fuel. I'm being stupid. Yeah, I had to put some grass on one of the things, copy it across from another image. I should have done it with this one because at the bottom here it's quite sharp. But oh well. But yeah, I made a couple of small alterations here and there, which I hope won't. I always feel uncomfortable when I'm messing with other artists' work, because I'm like, you put effort into this, and I don't know your work as well as you do, and I don't know which bits you're specifically attached to. So I want to, as much as possible, if I do make alterations to someone's art, I want to make sure that it's in consultation with them. But yeah, in this case, I was like, I don't know. I don't know whether or not I should feel, whether or not you're going to feel positive or not about these kinds of changes. But I'm glad to hear that that's not too bad.
Yeah, I totally understand that, because like I think if I was in your shoes, I would also feel very uncomfortable about making like changes to the art. It's just like
It's like, you put so much effort into this.
And it's like, I'm not saying that it's not great, but I need it to fit the purpose, and it almost fits.
It's so
It
close.
almost fits.
Yeah. Yeah. We had originally like talked about this idea of having like tracking the emotional state of the different villagers and making them happier when you deliver stuff to them. And I'm sad that we didn't get that in, because I think it would make what's here feel a lot stronger and a lot more interesting. But you can't always do everything you want to do, and that's just the nature of game development. But that's an idea that I still kind of spend a lot of time thinking about. Particularly like that, the inspiration for that being an element in the game at all comes from a game I used to play on my Amiga, another game from the 80s, called Conquest of Camelot, which is this Sierra adventure game that that where you play King Arthur and you've got to go and do a bunch of stuff. But there's a bit where you go to Jerusalem, and you what am I saying? So you go to Jerusalem and there's a lot of people there who aren't happy in their lives, I guess, and
Okay.
like just setting aside the idea of like, white person has to come and fix everyone's problems, because that, that's not a super great look. But I did like the idea of like the game gets you to interact with these people, and you don't have much available to you, but the game encourages you to interact with these people, empathize with who they are and what's going on in their lives, and try and make some small gesture that improves their situation. And sometimes that's like someone who hasn't had a customer in a long time. You go and you buy some food of theirs that you don't necessarily want or care about, but that's like a good deed, right?
Yeah.
And I like that. That really stuck with me. This idea of doing something nice for someone. Another thing is where like you buy a falafel off this vendor and then you give it to this starving kid, and she's like so touched by that she adopts the kid. And it's handled a little bit more gracefully than I just described it, but just like
this is very
inspiring
version.
Inspiring kindness in others is like that's really cool. And that's sort of something that I liked the idea of trying to put into this game. If we did do that kind of that aspect of modeling people's happiness and your like, because we can do that really easily. I really like the idea of being able to use deliveries to tell a story. And so like there might be someone who's getting you to like deliver a nasty letter to someone about how their rooster keeps them up at night because it's constantly crowing or something, right? Like there's like space to tell that kind of story, and then through your interactions with them, maybe you can deliver an apology or something, or do something that enables those people to have a connection, and then suddenly like you're sending eggs as a gift back to the other person, and they send something else back as a thank you for that. And like just this idea of getting people to connect and have positive interactions and positive relationships, like that's exciting to me.
Yeah, I definitely, because I know we talked about it a bit before, I definitely love the idea for sure, because I think at first I was thinking I guess a little more about the courier in terms of like, okay, this is the courier's eyes in terms of how maybe the courier interprets how he or she interacts with the packages he's delivering to. Packages? The people he's delivering to. And then once I started to get a better idea, I'm like, okay, it makes me think of like when I listen to Barbaro Fair. And it's just like, hey, do you know this person? Tell them if
remember me.
If I'm not mistaken, I think it's like, isn't it essentially a story of like, oh, you'll never have my love back because I'm asking you to do these impossible things, but not this is more negative, mind you, but in terms of like as a courier, be like, oh, like this person is asking you literally just to go A to B, and you might be a bystander, but you're not. You're
playing a role in that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like that's how I was like starting to see it. It's like, okay, you're playing a role, and there is something like, especially for a more positive story. I'm like, there is something like that I kind of love about it in terms of like, oh, it's just, I don't know, something.
It's wholesome, I guess. is that the word the kids use? It's wholesome.
Wholesome, yeah, and it's
yeah.
It's like, man, I I think in general, like, we want to see people happy. Like, you don't want to see, like, no one wants to see people suffer in general. So it's just like it hits that spot of like,
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
like, just like, oh yeah, it's, I don't know.
So yeah, if we did come back to this and I think we've talked about it, and in principle we kind of like the idea of maybe growing it into something bigger. I think those would definitely be aspects that we would be focusing on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's one aspect that I haven't talked about, or that we haven't talked about yet, which is the music. And like the art, the music is amazing and beyond anything that I had imagined or expected.
I really love the music.
Local Hoster did an amazing job. Again, I sort of said, do what you want, go nuts, and let them make their own decisions about how that would manifest and what it would be. We had briefly collaborated on another project, and the music that they came up with was not, for me, wasn't fitting with the project, because the project was mostly done, and so it already kind of had its own identity and stuff, and I sort of felt bad about that.
Was this for Dark Groove?
No, this was the Farrier. I don't know if you've seen anything of the Farrier. The Farrier maybe has a tiny bit in common with this. So you play as a dinosaur Farrier, and people bring you their dinosaurs, and you've got to look after their feet. But you're sort of I don't want to say that you're ostracized, but maybe you're introverted or something, and your character doesn't interact with people much, prefers to interact with the dinosaurs. And so in that way, I think it's a little bit similar to Cloud Courier in that you're an outsider and you're doing stuff for other people. But in the Farrier, you discover that you can understand the dinosaurs, and you learn to talk to the dinosaurs, and that's what the core of the game is about. And so the dinosaurs tell you things about the people who own them. Yeah, it's like it's one of those things where I focused on the mechanical implementation, and then the little bits of glue that tie the experience together to allow the thing to be appreciated as a whole just aren't quite there. It's so close, but it's not really appreciable as the kind of experience I want it to be. By the time that you realize that you can understand dinosaurs if you say things back to them that they've said to you, you can start to understand, and it replaces their dinosaur noises with like human readable text, so you can like it's mechanical in how it's done. And so I was like, I got all that in, and then there wasn't really much room to do the rest of the game, but I really like the idea of there's one dinosaur that's like sick, and talking to the dinosaur you're able to identify its ailment and then tell its owner how to care for it and stuff. There's another dinosaur that has it's like someone who's lost a ring, and the dinosaur knows where it is, and so you can talk to the dinosaur and then tell the person where the ring is and stuff. And sort of I wanted the main quest line thing to be about so the village is kind of going through this time where there's been a drought or something, and food production is a little bit low, and a bunch of food has gone missing, and so everybody in the town is kind of getting a little bit more distrustful and a little bit more angry and a little bit whatever. But the dinosaurs know what's going on. Like, all the people assume that someone is stealing it, but it turns out that the dinosaurs are stealing it to give to these other dinosaurs that don't have any food. And so, yeah, I like the idea of you being able to uncover this mystery and identify stuff. But anyway, Local Hoster did a little bit of music for that, and it just kind of wasn't fitting with the project, and then I didn't end up doing further work on it, so that sort of fell through, and nothing happened, and I felt bad about that, and had always wanted to have another opportunity to collaborate with them and give them another I don't want to say another chance, because it's like that's not really how this worked. It was more along the lines of, do you want to be involved with this? Yes you do, that's amazing. I would say that as a project lead, I was the person who benefited, But I was very glad to have another opportunity to collaborate with them, and I feel like they did something really cool. So they did one track for the menu here that we've just been listening to. If you make a new game, it just has like just the piano and harp, and then if we go and do a delivery, we'll hear that another chunk of the music will come in, and it gets more and more complex the more packages you deliver. And I really like that idea of the game growing as you play and explore and learn how it all does the thing.
Yes. So I can't hear the game right now, but I've at least played Cloud Courier that I remember the music, because I really did enjoy it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love how the...
So we got some
I don't know
strings
if
now.
evolves is the right word, but the music evolves, and
Yeah.
if I remember correctly, if you we'll say run out of
Yeah, if you fall off the
yeah.
bottom or go too far off the top, you lose a layer.
it goes back a step.
Yeah.
And I was like, I really like that. Or does it go back to the beginning? That part I don't remember.
No, you just lose one layer every time you
Okay, yeah.
every time you die.
Because it's it still keeps the progress of your checklist, right? For all the packages?
No, you lose all your packages as well. So maybe I should have probably thought about that a little bit more. I made those changes. The package losing on death was a very late thing that I did as part of the update that changed level generation.
I don't mean the current package. I mean like the list of past packages.
Yeah, that disappears entirely if you
okay.
die. Yeah, it gets it back to 0. So maybe the music should set back to 0. Maybe it does, and I've forgotten. I'll find out.
I'm like, it's been a while.
Yeah. Well, I obviously haven't been dying much when we've been playing today. But I'll do a couple of deliveries, and then we'll see how it sounds.
But this is what I was talking about earlier in terms of like something coming up and being like, oh, is this something? And it's like, oh, that's like an idea.
Yeah, you have a chance to make the connection, right?
Yeah.
And if the game is more explicit and not giving you the opportunity to make that connection on your own, then it's a little bit less interesting, maybe. Where is this package? Oh, it's down there. It's behind my joystick.
Oh, in the corner that you cannot see very well.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got strings now and horns. Let's go and fall off the bottom.
Goodbye, world.
Okay, so we've still got strings.
Okay.
So yeah, it only takes one layer.
Okay.
Which is fine, The layers that it adds are not, it's random, so it'll be different every time.
I'm just looking at the chat now.
Oh yeah.
One Chumpy Panda asks, is the game pseudo 3D?
I think that might have been about Hive Time.
Oh shoot, my bad.
That's okay. And I think they said that this is pretty cute as I switched across to Cloud Courier, which it is. It's very cute. It's adorable.
I'm not sure if the art is for me or for the Hive Time.
No, Cloud Courier. I had switched across by that point.
It's not Hive Time.
Oh my goodness, everything is Hive Time to me. Whenever I talk about a game, I just say Hive Time unconsciously because it's like whatever game I'm working on is Hive Time. But yeah, I had a lot of fun working on this with you and localhoster. I am proud of what we accomplished, and I hope that you're proud too. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring up or touch on before I move on to some less exciting games?
I mean, I see Bonesweeper in there, and I really liked Bonesweeper, but the thing that comes up immediately to mind because we're looking at the credits, I think you did a really good job with the tag as like. Oh my
goodness! You're saying that, and I'm noticing that there's like a transparent spot at the bottom of the tag here.
Right.
I'm like, this is so rough. It's so bad.
No, I think it's great. And I think this was also around the time you updated your not avatar, but the image.
Yeah, my avatar-y thing, logo, whatever. Yeah.
Looks great.
Thank you. I guess this ties back into stuff that I was talking about when we were talking about Bad Egg is, the previous avatar that I used was something that Miriam had drawn. It was my, was a part of Two Loft Bees. It was part of the image that started Two Loft Bees to begin with. And I really felt that I couldn't carry that forward with me, and I had to, I guess, give that up. And being in a difficult state of mind made it, being in a not great state of mind made it very difficult to find an image that I felt, I guess I don't need to keep pulling this back on screen. It's in the top corner of the stream. But yeah, it was difficult for me to arrive at something that reflected who I wanted to be instead of who I was right then, I guess, if that makes sense. And I think you gave me some feedback on it while I was working on it, and I was very appreciative of that.
Oh, I don't think I gave much, because I think the only thing I said was I was worried that the details in the face would be hard to read at a further distance, but they're dark enough in terms of the eye, mouth.
I think I did make some changes between then and this version. I think the first version I showed you might not have had a coloured in face. It might have just been a single colour thing.
Oh, I do remember that. And yes, okay, yeah,
And I also made the eyebrows and mouth and stuff bigger as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, the feedback you gave was definitely helpful.
Oh.
But yeah, whether we work on this again in the future, or whether we work on something else again in the future, I do hope that there is an opportunity for us to collaborate again, because I did really enjoy working with you on this and on the stuff that we worked on previously. That was going to be my segue into the end, but I lost steam and don't know how to finish up now. But again, thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun to talk about the game with you as well.
Yes, I realize I'm not good at I was gonna say endings. I'm not good at the goodbye part. I'm just like oh bye, hang up.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, hopefully we'll work on some stuff in the future.
Yeah, I look forward to it, because I definitely had a very positive experience.
I'm very glad to hear that, because I know that before we started I think you'd said this might have been the first game that you did art for, like it was the first game art you did.
For sure.
And I think you had expressed that was something that you had wanted to do. So I hope that I was able to provide an environment that was pleasant for a first experience, and that I'm glad to have given that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right.
Sorry, I'm tripping on my own words. Thank you very much. It really was a very positive experience, and to reiterate again, I definitely would love to work with you on any future projects.
Yeah.
I shall leave the Discord and go grab some dinner, and I will
enjoy
the rest of your stream after that.
Thank you again. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye. All right, that was Cloud Courier, which is a game I like a lot, and I was very glad to make. And it's small, I feel like I'd shown off all of the game within the first 5 minutes, but it was fun to talk about for a while. The next thing that I want to talk about is a little bit different, and it's just different. So I'm gonna get ready for something else. Okay, here we go. This game is something that I have wanted to make for years. And I got this joystick back in 2017, and the Linux drivers for it exposed some functionality for writing stuff onto the little screen on the throttle here. And when I saw that, I was like, oh wow, that's really cool. I would like to write some little games, little toys that just utilize the screen and the joystick and not the rest of the computer, as like something fun. And I never felt like I had the free time or the opportunity to work on that until at the very end of 2021. I was like, hey, I'm going to take a day off. I'm going to do this. So I got out my vacuum cleaner and vacuumed all the dust off my joystick, and sat down and mostly did it on stream. I made this little game where the idea is that you interact with the axes here and these little dials and stuff, and some of these buttons, and this little mode dial thing here, to influence the values here. So each axis and each of the mapped buttons has can influence up to 3 of these values, I think. And the idea is that you've got to find the right combination of states to make them all be 0. Yeah. Yep. We're actually not too far off there. Oh, okay, so that one does as well. Oh my goodness. Okay. And yeah, it's kind of like tuning in on a on like a radio signal or something. It's like 100% the game that I wanted to make, right? It's not very interesting visually right now. It's more of a proof of concept. And the mode dial also changes the sensitivity that these have. Yeah, okay, so that's probably the right mode. And we're gonna have a button here somewhere. Yeah, probably that one. Yeah, have that for sure. How do we get this one down? So that it's like usually you can spot a couple of I'm not sure how to get the second number down. Oh, there we go. I'd like maybe there's another button. Maybe we're just on the wrong band. Alright, let's try that one instead. Okay, that gets us pretty close. Yeah, this is what it is. Yeah, I really wanted a little game thing that was just primarily about exploring the state of. Oh, we definitely still need to keep that. The state of a device like this, like it's. So what's controlling that? That's that. Okay, so it's probably got to be down around here, which means that this needs to be quite high up here. Oh, that's close. Oh, it's so close. I can't remember what the it's the this one here is the main one. I think it's this. No, it's that one. Oh, that's interesting. Hey, there we go. We found it. That's all there is to it. It's like a Linux only thing that is requires you to build it, compile it with the driver integrated. So it's not very useful to anyone. It's open source. It's available. If I continue to work on this, again, I would like to get that output down into the screen here. I do like the idea of presenting it as tuning in on a radio frequency and having an oral component as well. I think that could be really cool. But that's the first of a bunch of different little toy game things that I could imagine doing with this device. Yeah, I don't know if or when I'll get a chance to do any of those, but it is what it is. That's one of the games that I made in this past year. It was a lot of fun to come back to and just kind of work on something that had been outstanding on my to-do list for so many years. Obviously it's not gonna feed the bread or put mouths on the table. But yeah, I am very glad to have done that. And I also got to paint this down here, lovely vector version of the throttle. Which I guess I illustrated. I didn't really paint it. But anyway, that's really all I have to say about about this one. There's not a lot to it. But on the topic of projects that I have, old coming back to do things from old things from my to-do list is Flat here, and Flat's like a really special game to me, I guess. It is the first game that I made as part of my current game dev career. It's the game that I made for my first game jam. It is the first game of my own that I open sourced. And I feel like I can trace just about every opportunity that I've had in the industry back to either this jam or the Wolfire community that brought the four of us who made it together. I feel like I can trace everything that I am today back directly to the context that this game came out of. So Wolfire were the company that made Overgrowth. That's who Aubrey was working for at the time, and has continued to do work with. Anton did the soundtrack for this. He did the music for Overgrowth as well, and has worked with Wolfire a bunch. Wolfire ended up doing the Humble Bundle stuff, and I got a lot of visibility and prominence from the stats stuff I did with Humble Bundle. And it all just kind of snowballs from there. Steel Raven 7 I worked with on this. He was project lead, I guess, on this project. He had his original concept doc and then invited me and Johannes and Anton to collaborate, which we all did eventually. Anton was busy working on Receiver at the time and didn't come on board to do the music until after the jam was over, but he did this really cool eerie stuff. So basically, after the jam, I continued working on the project a little bit just to sort of polish it up, and so I was working with Anton to get the music happening and fixing a bunch of bugs and stuff. I think Johannes was moving across the world at the time and didn't have a lot of free time, and Steel Raven 7 I think we all pushed ourselves a little bit too hard during the jam and need a bit of a break. But anyway, the point is that after that sort of week or so worth of post-jam development, we open sourced the game and had a couple of contributions, one of which was a port to an open source handheld gaming platform called the Open Pandora, and that patch had included a bunch of things that I wanted to put in the game anyway, and so the person who submitted it didn't have a GitHub account or didn't feel super comfortable doing a pull request at the time, and so I put it on my to-do list to review because I wanted to make some changes and like integrate some of those contributions with the rest of the game that would have been Open Pandora specific. And again, because it wasn't a project that was putting bread on my table, I found it very difficult to get back to, and so it wasn't until this year, like 9 years later, last year, 9 years later, that I actually got to merge that contribution and make changes to the game. So yeah, it was long overdue. I feel so happy having done that and having worked on it. Like, in addition to merging that contribution and bringing in a couple of other things, I also did a huge number of bug fixes and added some new features and did some rebalancing and stuff that I think do a better job of presenting the game as we intended it to be. So the most obvious thing is that there's now a main menu. Like previously this was just a screen and you press a button and then the game starts. So now we've got like the how to play screen. This is what was on the screen originally. And we've got like settings now. All this stuff is new. I added the hint system that I had started work on during the jam but never finished off. Your volume controls, and there's joystick support now as well, which is disabled because I don't want to play it with this joystick. It's a first-person game and I prefer to play it with a mouse and keyboard. There's an auto heal option which makes makes gameplay a little bit more streamlined for people who don't want to have to like fiddle with pressing. So I think it was Q or H to heal, but because like mechanically you're engaging with the game a little bit differently from how you would normally engage with a typical first-person game, that ends up requiring having a bit of extra cognitive load with it. I also added a credits screen where I thank the original developers and just kind of mention the contributors file and some of the technologies that we used and assets and stuff. And also a button that opens the game's website. So what I will do is I will show the game for anybody who hasn't seen it. This is flat. The idea is that you only have one axis of movement, so a little bit like one of those old school first-person games where you can only look left and right, you can't look up and down. In this though, instead of pressing W to go forwards, you hold down W and alternate between A and D to skate forward and gain momentum. So it's this kind of first-person ice skating combat game. I was brought on board to do art, so I did all of the art at the start of the game, at the start of the jam, and then as we progressed through to the end of the jam and into that post-jam period, I started to move into doing programming and stuff. The skating mechanic was something that I had pitched, so I guess I was doing design work on it the whole time. We're gonna have some enemy skaters here coming after us. Where are you guys? Yep, there they are. I'd been inspired by yet another old game that I played in the 80s, which was it was a company called Epix, made a series of games called Summer Games, Winter Games, California Games. There may have been another one, I'm not sure. It's like Skate or Die kind of thing, where you had like a whole, or Ski or Die kind of thing, where you had like a whole bunch of different events that you could compete in as like separate mini games. And one of them was speed skating, and the idea was that you like move the joystick back and forward, left and right, with increasing momentum to like build up your speed. And I like the idea of trying to explore whether or not that would translate into a 3D space, whether or not we could do that in first person and have that be interesting. And the answer I think is yes. It's different. What did I bump into? Oh, I bumped into that. But yeah, so we made this thing where you alternate between these combat encounters and just like skating around and enjoying the atmosphere. Anton did this music that is like, it's one piece but it has layers, and the layers increase. Where are you dudes? There you are. Oh, hang on, I heard that. Let's go and get the other gun. Hiya! Yeah, Anton did this thing where it's like one piece of music with a whole bunch of different layers. And each of the layers are like, they're constantly playing all the time, but we kind of like keep them muted until it's time to play them. And in the initial pass, they weren't in sync properly, whereas in this update, I was able to like do the proper thing and make them make them behave as they should. Alright, and then after you go through enough combat encounters, you eventually get to see the Pulse Dragon, which is this cool dude, who's going to come down for us. And he's pretty tough. Combat's a lot easier when you skate backwards, but when you skate backwards, boonk, you don't always get to see where you're going, and you can bump into things. So it's kind of got this requirement of, come on, I want to get the thing. Let me get the thing. All right, here we go. We got it. We're good. There's just more health kits in here. We've got it. We've got all the weapons. So initially, ow. Initially, you know, you could have like a typical number of skaters spawn with those. Oh, I just realised that this is still quite loud. Let me turn it down. Here I am, like, just talking, mindless of the fact that I cannot be heard. But yeah, so with this, I wanted to have the finale be a little bit more approachable. I made it so that fewer enemies spawn with chests at the end, so the whole point of them was that they were meant to be a distraction rather than you know, an actual challenge. Boonk. I made it so that you can jump further horizontally as well, so it's a little bit easier to dodge out of the way of this guy now. I rejigged some of the health a bit, changed some of the movement speed. That's not good. That's not meant to crash there. Okay, well maybe there's a bug that I gotta fix. But anyway, I guess that's good. That means that there's there's something for everyone else to discover. I won't show the whole game. But that boss encounter has 3 phases, and I tweaked it so that it's you know, each phase is slightly tuned a little bit better to be a little bit more accessible, a little bit easier. I mean, it's still a hard game, and you're still not expected to finish it on your first time. But what I will do is just pick up a couple of weapons and kill a couple of people and do some of that stuff. You know, if you skate long enough, they'll pass out of the despawn range. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. So, actually, I can pick this up. You can switch between weapons at runtime. So this is the number 2 weapon. Hey guys. We'll just like thin their numbers out a bit, and then we'll pull out the pistol. So one of the other new additions that I was able to add in. Come on. Just there we go. All right, that's it. There we go. All right. One of the other additions I was able to do now that we've got a menu in here is add a statistics screen, which shows the weapons that you've picked up and what your accuracy rating is with them, and also how many of each enemy type you've killed. So it's just the skater and the dragon tail and the dragon head. But this is cool because like it tells you how long you've been playing, tells you all this stuff. Like when you die, you get the opportunity to check this out as well. So yeah, it's just another nice little thing that I was able to put in there. But that's the update to Flat. I was really happy to do that, and now you can, like, when the game ends, it doesn't just quit automatically. You can go back to the menu and start a new game. But yeah, I'm deeply embarrassed that there was a crash there. I think once I wrap up the stream, I'm probably going to go and see if I can find out what caused that. I didn't see anything in the output that that said what that might have been. Yeah, it must have been during the state transition for the Pulse Dragon. I'll look into it. We'll find out. Anyway, that is Flat. And again, I am just super happy to have you know, had the opportunity to what am I saying? Words are meant to be coming out of my mouth. I'm super happy to have had the opportunity to to come back and work on it, and to make sure that it's a little bit more fun and a little bit more polished. It's definitely in a much better position for me to accept contributions as well, like as an open source project. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just getting the next game set up. The next game is, of course, Bonesweeper, which is this game here. Dunk. There it is. Bonesweeper. Enhance. There we go. Alright. So Bonesweeper was my idea of exploring what Minesweeper would be like if I made it. It is... this is a prototype, and it's like a concept exploration prototype. It's not super... it's not super polished, and it doesn't look great. So it's got like this temporary menu and stuff. But it explores, or gives me the opportunity to explore how different bits and pieces of the game work. So we'll head out to a dig site. We'll pick a moderate medium. The locations are picked randomly. They are not where these dinosaurs are actually from. We're gonna go and get a Stegosaurus, I think. So again, everything's kind of plain here. In a larger version of this game, this would be a lot more visually interesting. But the idea is that we dig around and eventually uncover a bunch of stuff. And from here on, it is... Oh, helps if I pay attention to what I'm doing. From here on, it's just Minesweeper, right? Like it's not anything particularly unusual. But it does have a couple of small elements that differentiate it. So one is that destroying a bone or a fossil does not end you the game. So if you're playing actual Minesweeper, that will terminate the game immediately. And I think that not having death as a consequence actually makes it more interesting. It means that you have the opportunity to make the best of the situations that you find yourself in. Like the idea that I'm not really excited by or interested in games that where everything will be perfect if you play perfectly. Like I feel like life in general and games in particular are more interesting when things happen that you can't foresee and you have to then make the best of that awkward situation. And yeah, I'm glad that that's what I was able to do with Bonesweeper. I'm glad that it sort of t-shirt, please leave me alone. All right. Yeah, I'm really happy with how that aspect of it comes out. So yeah, we work through and we work out where all the fossils are, and yeah, I thought that might be one. There are some cases where you end up having to guess, and I, again, personally don't feel like that's a problem, but I recognize that some people want to have less uncertainty in their game. So in a larger version of this, I would definitely be adding some, or I have in mind to add some like power-ups or special abilities that you can use either a limited number of times or have a cooldown or something, where like maybe you're using like a sonar thing, like in the first Jurassic Park film, where you like can use a thing and it will tell you where the surrounding bones are, or maybe what the numbers surrounding the cursor are rather than where the actual bones are, so that you've kind of got some ideas that you can infer things from. Yeah, get a bunch of like power-up ideas that would help alleviate some of those uncertain situations. I think there's also like mechanically some things that I could do that would something I didn't show is that it's 3D as well, so you can you can see things from a different angle if that's what you're into, or you can hold down Alt to see things from the top, which is kind of nice. Whoop. Hang on, is that right? Yeah, no, that's got to be one. That's got to be one. And therefore those aren't. Alright, sweet. And then I was like, okay, so my thought process was, I like to play Minesweeper, but I think that death as a consequence is boring, and I think that explosives are boring. Like, neither of those things are interesting, and they don't give you any... like, there's nowhere to go from there. Because if you're dead and it's game over, you're dead and it's game over. Like, there's nothing you can do with that. Whereas I think if you smash a fossil and you feel bad about smashing a fossil, then there is somewhere that you can go from there. So yeah, that my thought was, all right, well, like if we take the explosives out of Minesweeper, you know, what is Minesweeper about? And it's about this kind of investigative or deductive gameplay where you're trying to identify things and infer things from clues that you found. And I was like, okay, well, the way that it's manifested, because you're exploring like a set possibility space and trying to find something within that, it kind of feels like you're digging for treasure, right? And then, like, what is the most interesting treasure? Dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are the most interesting treasure. So it just kind of organically leads, at least as far as my thought processes go, organically leads to that. And then I thought, well, like, another thing that is not interesting about Minesweeper is that the game is... hang on, I've got to unplug this joystick, the lights on it, and burning my retinas out. The other thing that I think makes Minesweeper less interesting is that every game is discrete and there's no reason to think about or remember or value how you did on a previous game, you know, how you do on a current game. And so I was like, well, if you're digging up fossils, like, it would be cool to let you see the fossils that you've dug up. And in an effort to make that a little bit more interactive, I decided that I would like to give you a like an interactive thing where you actually build the skeleton that that you've dug up. So each fossil that you uncover in the dig phase is a fossil here in the assembly phase. You also dig up these miscellaneous fossils that aren't part of the current skeleton, so you've got to sort those out if you want to. You know, they're just something to provide a little bit of extra distraction or a little bit of extra, you know, thing to care about. And so the idea is that you have to build it from the ground up. You know, I know that this one goes here, but I can't place it yet, so I have to put it over here in this bucket for later. And yeah, like it has Tetris style controls. So it kind of feels a little bit familiar from like a control perspective or an interface perspective, but like it sort of manifests very different to Tetris because you don't have any agency with where you're placing stuff. Like you have to put things in the slot where they go, and it's much more about trying to identify what these bits are. You're like, okay, well, is this bit, does that go? No, it doesn't go there. It must go over here. So there's a lot of like visual identification of what the thing is. And yeah, I just, you know, I'm here to toot my own horn, I guess. I like what I did with this game, and I like how it came together, and I enjoy what it is, and I enjoy what it does. Enough that I decided that I would make a full game out of it. Obviously, if we make a mistake, we lose that fossil, and if we happen to have dug up multiples, then you know we get to keep that, you know, keep going. But if we run out of bits, then you know obviously we can't go further. So yeah, just a little summary telling us that we smashed one fossil and we sorted a bunch of misc fossils and we assembled the skeleton. Yes. And then once you've assembled all your skeletons, you can then go and look at them in this showcase here, where it tells you a little bit of information about the dinosaur, how many you've assembled, when it lived, who described it. Describing is the process of identifying, I guess, a skeleton. So the people who dig a dinosaur up are usually not the people who are credited with discovering it. It's the people who describe it, and those are the people who take all those bits and pieces and try and work out how they fit together and try and understand what type of animal it was, because that's often not possible out on the dig site, from what I understand. I've never personally been out to a dig site. I would have liked to, but there's a pandemic and it doesn't really make sense to circulate in new contexts during a pandemic. But yeah, I want to add some trivia in there, and also tell a joke or two. So Stegosaurus has a tiny head, but it's full of big, big dreams. That's kind of the inverse of what Hive Time does in the Bpedia, where it all of the main text is humorous and writing that matches the game's kind of comedic tone. But down the bottom, it has a little fact. I wanted to make the fact the focus and have a little joke as an extra thing. So yeah, for every skeleton that you've dug up, there's a bunch of them in the game. You've got access to the showcase there, and then we also have the MISC fossil viewer where we get to look at the different miscellaneous fossils that we dug up. And some of them are not fossils, some of them are trace fossils. So these are footprints. Obviously, there's no room in this for me to talk about it. But if I made if I am committed to making a full version of this game. So in the full version, I will be talking about how trace fossils are different from regular fossils, and how we actually even give trace fossils like footprints and stuff different names. We don't say this is a Triceratops footprint, or this is a footprint of this species of Triceratops. We actually give it a different name and a different identification, because there's so much uncertainty about what trace fossils belong to what species and what animals, that it makes sense to classify and categorize them differently, so that they're not like explicitly tied to each other. It doesn't have to be renamed if we suddenly decide that it was made by a different creature. This is a coprolite. It's fossil poo. Yeah, I enjoyed making a fossil poo, and then we're back to the shell. So again, in a full version of the game, there'd be a lot more of those. Another thing that this has, that I'm really proud of, is that this game has text-to-speech, so I can turn the game off and not look at it, and I will play. Yeah, I'm gonna do the skeleton building. We're gonna start with maybe we'll do Deinonychus.
Control ready. Tail base spawned. I H G A I J K 10 J 9.
Hang on. These are the wrong settings. Oh, okay, never mind. It's fine. It was a trilobite, right?
Fossil sorted. Skull spawned. 10. Right leg spawned. Left. Right. Tail mid spawned. Tail tip spawned. Pelvis spawned. 10. Left leg spawned. Left. 10. Right. 9. Left arm spawned. Left. 10. Left. Right arm spawned. Right. 10. Right. 9. Right. Coprolite 1 spawned. Missed fossil sorted. Left foot spawned. Warmer. Hot. 10. Down. Right. Up. Per left. Up. Perfect drop. Footprint 1 spawned. 10. Missed fossil sorted. Ribs spawned. Shell 1 spawned. 10. Right. 9. Right foot spawned. 10. Hot. 9 right. Up. Perfect. Drop. Left hand spawned. Neck spawned. 10. Tail base spawned. Skull spawned. Right leg spawned. Warmer. Hot. Right. Up. Perfect. Drop. Tail mid spawned. Tail tip spawned. Pelvis spawned. Left
I
leg
think I
spawned.
could have pasted them.
Shoulder. Warmer. Hot. Right. Tear up. Perfect. Drop. Left arm spawned. Right. Up. Right arm spawned. Ribs spawned. 10. Shell 1 spawned. Left hand spawned. Neck spawned. Tail base spawned. Skull spawned. Tail mid spawned. Tail tip spawned. Pelvis spawn colder, warmer, warmer, hot, down, right, up. Perfect drop. Left arm spawned. Down, left. 9 left, left, right, right. Right arm spawned. Ribs spawn warmer, 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 hot, up, left, now up, drop. Shell 1 spawned. Missed fossil sorted. Left hand spawned. Down, left, left, left. Neck spawned. Warmer, 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 hot, right, up, drop. Tail base spawned. Colder, colder, warmer, hot, up. Perfect drop. Skull spawned. Warmer, 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 hot, up, drop. Tail mid spawned. Hot, cold, hot, down, right, up, drop. Tail tip spawned. Warmer, warmer, hot, right, up, drop. Left arm spawned. Warmer, hot, right, up, left, now right, up, drop. Right arm spawned. Warmer, 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 hot, cold, hot, up, perfect drop. Left hand warmer, 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 perfect, left, now right, up, perfect drop. Leave.
Hey, I did it. So the game is entirely playable without visuals, and I'm, it's got rough edges, sure, but I'm really proud to have been able to make something that can be, played or enjoyed in this way. Like it's really cool to me. I'm super happy to have been able to do that. Yeah. So there's another build of this. I'm just gonna turn that off. Yeah, there's a what am I saying? There's a build of this. This is a development build. It's not quite public yet. Which has a new dinosaur, which is this Immunosaurus, which I guess I'll build while I talk about it. This is a type of plesiosaur. I don't know. I had something insightful that I was going to say, but now I've lost it. Yeah. So to kind of celebrate working on, a larger version of this game, I want to do a little update. But there's like some extra stuff that I need to do. In terms of getting ready to properly announce that stuff. But yeah, I am going to be making a bigger version of the game, and that's going to have a world map replacing this dig site selection menu. The showcase is going to be replaced with a an actual museum that you can place your skeletons and stuff in. And it's going to have customizable player avatars. At the moment, it's got the ability for you to customize your name, and you can have multiple players that track their own progress individually in the prototype. But yeah, the full version will have that kind of stuff and have those power-ups that I was talking about and a few other bits and pieces, and obviously more than 6 skeletons to build. But yeah, I did the music for this as well on my own. This is my first attempt in any game at doing generative music. I wanted to have something that evoked some of the same kind of qualities that wind chimes have. I don't want it to sound like wind chimes. I want it to sound a little bit more structured than that, but I wanted it to feel a little bit aimless and a little bit meditative. Which I think I nailed. I think I'm really happy with how that came out. I also made it so that whatever you've been looking at, so if we go in here and we look at Deinonychus in the showcase and then we come back, it'll show us a Deinonychus skeleton in the background. Or if we go and look at Pteranodon, it'll be a Pteranodon here, or a Stegosaurus. The same goes for visiting stuff in the dig site. whatever dig site you go to, when you come back to the menu, it'll show those bones here in the menu. The same for construction. So if I go into here to pretend to build a Triceratops and then come back, Triceratops is what we see. So that's kind of fun as well. Yeah, that's about all I was going to talk about with regards to Bonesweeper. Keep an eye out, because I'm going to talk a little bit more about this new version of the project, and show some more stuff off about that in the future. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about the prototype for now, since that's what I gave most of my attention to into 2021 as far as Bonesweeper goes. But yeah, so that is pretty much it for stuff that I want to talk about today. I was hoping to spend 20 minutes per game, and I think I've drastically went over that. But I had some good conversations, and I had some good discussion on stuff. I hope that it's been interesting to see some of the work that I've done. Apologies to anybody who was expecting a more interactive stream as far as chat interaction goes. This is mostly done so that I can have an archive video of it. But thank you anyway to everybody who was hanging out and checking out my stuff. I'm thankful for the attention. Is good to see you all, and good to be able to share all this stuff with you. I'm looking forward to 2022. As I said before, like Bonesweeper is going to be the primary focus for that, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. Thank you for watching, and I will return another time. Goodbye. Where is my end screen thing? There it is.